Hello and welcome back to the Raspberry Podcast. Today I'm joined by Tim Shieff. Tim is a former free running world champion. He is also a champion Ninja Warrior, winning the Ninja Warrior UK show a couple of times, I believe. And it's actually how I first came across Tim many years back, because we both competed on the same season, I think maybe even the same episode of Ninja Warrior. Since then, our paths have kind of moved away from each other and then eventually moved back towards each other as we were sort of realigned through our mutual love of human biomechanics and movement and physical training. And I, got chatting to Tim a year, maybe 2 years ago now. And yeah, we ended up doing some training together. I think that Tim is one of the most interesting guys that I've ever met, ever spoken to when it comes to human biomechanics and movement and different training and lifestyle ideas. I think that he's a very deep thinker and someone that I've wanted to have on the podcast for a really long time. So was very glad to finally be able to sit down and have a chat with him. I really, really enjoyed it, talking about his journey and then really getting deep into some of the various human biomechanic principles and movement ideologies, for lack of a better word, that he has gone through, and some that I do as well. So really, really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you guys enjoy listening. Check it out. Tim, thank you very much for joining me.
Dan, yeah, thanks for having me, man.
You're someone that I've wanted on. Very rarely do I do a completely un-martial art related episode. With you, even though you're not a martial artist, I actually think that this is a martial art related episode, because all of the stuff that you do, and I know that you're a fan of martial arts, and I know that you watch MMA. I'm not sure if you trained anything. If not, we definitely got to get you on the mat sometime.
I know, man.
But so much, I actually find so much insight into some of the stuff that you talk about when it comes to biomechanics. So I've wanted to have you on just for chatting about your journey through movement and life in general, because I find it so fascinating. And then I do actually think there's a connection. So usually when I say at the beginning of a podcast, this is not a jiu-jitsu episode, people turn off because there's too many jiu-jitsu only or martial art only listeners. But don't, because that's stupid.
It's biomechanics. And
that's it.
And it's the root of everything, and in terms of movement. So I do think it applies massively for all martial arts.
Yeah, I agree. And biomechanics is something that's always interested me, and one of the only things that has interested me, and it's actually one of the things that interests me the most about grappling, is that it is, there's so many interesting theories and principles and concepts when it comes to movement, be it physics or biology and anatomy, but when you just look at them from an abstract direction, they can become quite boring. So looking at studying biomechanics,
the word is quite turns people off, I think.
Yeah, studying biomechanics in a textbook is really boring, but when you're able to see the application of it on the mat, and that's what I do, when I look at a role, when I teach jiu-jitsu especially, it's been a big part of how I develop my teaching style, is focusing on biomechanics and understanding how the human body works. And if you understand how it works, you can understand how to stop it from working. So that's the ideas there. But we're going to get onto all of that biomechanics stuff. To start with, I want to chat about sort of your, the start of you in movement, I guess, in terms of sport. It's almost difficult because, of course, I don't know where you started, but the thing that you're most known for, sport wise, I don't know whether it's called a sport or not, but it's parkour and doing Ninja Warrior stuff. And that's where I first was exposed to you, and when I first started following you. Is Ninja Warrior sport?
I think you can call it parkour we always called a discipline, which I guess is like a martial art in that sense. And you've got the art of fight and the art of flight. So I guess I'm more on the art of flight, whereas all MMA is kind of the art of fight, right? Jiu-jitsu and everything.
That's the first thing you said. I'm like, that's interesting. Do you view parkour as the other side of the coin to fighting, as in fight and flight? I've never seen it expressed in that way.
Yeah, I do.
Wow.
Because it's when you see when you look at the roots of it, and when I first started getting into it, and it came out this suburb of Paris called Nice, and the founder David Bell, who was inspired by his father, who was a fireman who would always win like the rope climbing competition and stuff like that. The old firefighters were like far more functionally fit, and it came from his father, and he got into it. And you see these young, strong, healthy, like late 20s, and it is a discipline, and there's a lot of risk involved, and there's a lot of similarities with martial arts in the sense of the risk, and the only thing is there's not another person trying to do it to you. It's the environment we're choosing to put ourselves in, but as long as you check the environment and your body's, what your body's capable of, it is kind of that. So the roots of parkour for sure, but then just like there's jiu-jitsu and there's karate, and they're kind of they're still fighting, but they're different spectrums. Flight for me, there's like I always say my favorite flight athlete is Kilian Jornet. In one aspect, he's the best mountain runner of all time, who runs 100, 200 kilometer races through the mountains. So that's one aspect. Then there's parkour, which is another kind of aspect of flight. Then there's like straight up rock climbing or something where the terrain is a bit different. But these are all kind of individual pursuits with the human body and the biomechanics that they've got, but tuned to function differently in different environments.
That's fucking awesome. I've literally never seen that. So you're combining running, mountain runs, parkour, rock climbing. They're all ways of moving through terrain, space, environment.
Dictated by the terrain.
Yeah. And just having that, sort of opposing the fight side of, that the famous term fight or flight. So, as you're saying that, I'm going, wait a minute, is parkour a self-defense? And when you actually think about it, but here's the crazy thing. It might be the most effective self-defense in the world. It might actually, I might have a new answer when someone asks me what is the best martial art for self-defense. I might go parkour.
If everyone could do it, or to a degree, I guess criminals. The thing is, if you could do it, you wouldn't necessarily be a criminal. Although there's people think you're cat burglars, but yeah, you could get away from precarious scenarios.
Because when you talk about people, I don't. The whole discussion about self-defense and martial arts is an interesting one because it's not something that I care that much about. I feel like because I'm relatively young and I'm in good shape and I'm strong and I'm a bigger guy and I can also grapple well, I never feel like I feel like I can protect myself. And I do understand that some people may get into jiu-jitsu or other martial arts in order to protect themselves specifically, opposed to competition like I do. But anyone you speak to who has any sort of true understanding of self-defense in its broadest term, where it's not just about techniques, where it's about de-escalating with verbally de-escalating or having situational awareness. And the first thing that they will always tell you is the number one rule of self-defense is if you can get out of there, run. That's the number one thing. And that I even saw Jocko talking about it recently, and Jocko's about the toughest bastard that you'll ever see on this planet. The guy's done tours in Afghanistan, and he's absolutely massive and jacked, and he's a jiu-jitsu black belt, and he's a scary dude. So if he starts talking about self-defense, you better listen. And he goes, someone tries to start a fight with me, I'll run. And if they try and punch me, I'll run. If they try and kick me, I'll run. And the only time I won't run is if they grab me, because I can't run. In any other scenario, I will run. And then you go, well, parkour, you can run a lot more effectively around most environments where you're going to be in that sort of situation.
So it'd be like, who could run the best 5K? Because if you can outrun them for 5 kilometers, by that point, they've given up. But if you don't need, I think that's to your point, if you can hop a wall and they can't hop that wall, it's over. You don't need the 5K.
The idea that I would have the outrun an attack of 5 kilometers is terrifying.
Well, I think a good mile will do you.
I'd hope that a good 50 meters would do me, to be honest. But
if they're after you,
they must really be after you. You really upset someone if they run you, if they chase you down for 5K.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just such an interesting way of doing it. So first things first is parkour is now officially the most effective. Well, officially a self-defense.
Yeah,
art.
officially self. They say the quote for parkour that the founder came up with was "Be strong to be useful," And that kind of sums that up. It's like if you're useful at least for yourself, then and everyone takes care of themselves, and you can hop the thing, and we can all hop this wall here or get to that place. It's useful. And I remember I've like been locked out my house and been able to climb to the second story and break in, like the window was open. And it does alter my perspective of like what's possible when I have to lock the house, because I know what people can do, and often I see people that think, oh, no one can get in that, so we're safe, and I'm like, well, you're not actually, in terms of that kind of thing. But it's just useful things like that where you know you can get into the house if you have to or whatever, and it just teaches you so much along the way, you know, about biomechanics, but not in a cooler way than.
Oh, like you know, from a visual, from an aesthetic point, there's not many cooler things than parkour. There really isn't. Like I remember
when you say that, can I just ask?
Yeah.
Do you mean because it's free running and parkour, and people that kind of it wasn't initially meant to discern.
So what's the difference between the two?
So because Sebastian Foucan was best friends with David Bell, who founded parkour, and parkour is spelt with it was originally parcours or something like that in French, means obstacle course, but it's with a C. They gave it a K, because it's a little more than just, you know, hopping the wooden log. You know, it's kind of an evolution of that in an urban environment. So they gave it a K, gave it its own thing. Then the Sebastian Foucan came to the UK to do a documentary, and he was trying to translate it from French to English. And he said it's kind of free running, like it's running free. It's like you're not just running on flat, you're running, you know, different terrains. And he kind of just meant to translate it in a simplest Persian possible, but what that birth though accidentally, but it's just people have just gone with it now, is free running means more allows for more creativity. So that's when you add the somersaults and the flips and the twists, and that's what most people see it as today, is, you know, these massive flips and precision somersaults and all sorts and twists and all. Whereas parkour originally is literally A to B as efficiently as possible. And I think we all go through that teenage thing where we love all the flips and the somersaults, but the essence of it was the efficiency. And I come full circle where I'm the most impressive stuff to me, and when this sport gets to a next wave, and it hits in a bit of a lull at the moment, it hits these peak moments when James Bond did the thing, and then the documentaries come out, and then on the Instagram it's kind of popping still, but when someone actually creates a short, like 100-meter obstacle course competition with parkour in mind, that is when people will watch it. Because if you watched the Olympics and you watched a 100-meter dash and you watch 8 people side by side, if you watched 8 people side by side on the exact same obstacle course that was built like in a cool way, it would be fucking cool, and everyone would want to watch that. You've got the hurdles. Now imagine if instead of every hurdle there's a different one of them's like a monkey bars, and one of them's a giant like hole in the floor, and one of them's a vault box, and so in each position you've got a different obstacle, and these people are side by side and you can see them like gather and lose ground and whatever. That would be cool. The free running competitions that I won the world championships in free running, which was you have 60 seconds to complete. You had a day before to create 2 runs, and you did 60 seconds to complete your run. Some judges they vote for you on difficulty, creativity, execution, flow. So it's very artistic based. But when you watch a competitive run in 60 seconds, compared to the show reels that we're able to make, where you're in different locations and you can take all the time you want to prep, and you're doing one big trick, and then, you know, 3 days later you're shooting in another location, you do another big trick. You can't do that in a competition format. It limits what you can perform at. So what people are used to seeing is these epic montages of epic crazy flips and spins. But then when you see it in competition, it's kind of a bit disappointing, because it's one location, and it's, you know, different people will perform differently, and it's still cool to watch. But when you see a speed competition, and they do them on this low level now, and they do one-on-one, so it's side by side, one-on-one, and it's kind of knockout stages. That's what will grow, and I think because I think all martial arts and everyone will start to go, that's fucking badass, and that is the art of flight for me. It's when these do these one-on-one races, and you don't really need to race someone that gets into competitive discussions, but it's cool to see 2 people side by side on a course going hell for leather.
Yeah. You know, and that's super interesting. You know, I was planning to ask you about sort of the history of parkour, and I didn't even have to, because you just gave it to me anyway. So that's super interesting.
There's a movie called District 13. If anyone's seen that, it's Luc Besson, who's a good director, and the white main actor in that with the black hair, he's the guy that founded parkour.
Really?
Because often people think it was Sebastian, the dark black fellow from James Bond, and that was his best friend, but it was David that started it.
And, you know, to answer what you were going to ask me, which is, you know, when I say I think it's one of the coolest things to watch, is that the flips and or is it the efficiency of the movement? It's the efficiency of the movement. That's what I find cool. I'm actually not super impressed by flips. Like, yeah, cool. A flip is cool, but you can see that in tricking and you can see that in general.
I love tricking.
You know, it's great, but what I actually love is what you're talking about, which is the getting from one place to another, you know, using
efficiently.
Yeah, the most efficient way possible, using biomechanics pushed to its absolute limit to sort of cut every corner perfectly where you need to. I think that, you know, there's something beautiful about someone moving through these locations and obstacles that you would just, you know, you'd be struggling to move through, but doing it as if they didn't weigh anything and it was completely effortless.
Like a tiger or something. And
you watch like a monkey like move through a tree.
Yeah, gibbons and all sorts. And so that's why Ninja Warrior, because there is still quite a divide between the Ninja Warrior community and the parkour community. And I've kind of somehow towed that line because I competed on Ninja Warrior for fun, but I've never took it super seriously. But the more lately I'm going to these Ninja Warrior gyms are appearing, and it'd be cool if they get to the same level as kind of the BJJ gyms, because it's that art of flight. And what with Ninja Warrior, you'll have a specific obstacle which will literally focus on one element. So it might be kind of like a pegboard, which is kind of common thing people see, or, you know, monkey bars, or you see the salmon ladder where people do pull-ups and they move the bar to the next rung, something like that, which is an explosive movement, and you've got to do it as so many in a row. And so Ninja Warrior has the diagonal steps where you've got to stride from one to the other. And there's loads of these different variety of obstacles with balance and other things, where this one obstacle will train you to do one thing efficiently, and then another obstacle will train you. So it's kind of taking cool elements that wouldn't necessarily exist in nature. It's kind of got its own creative spin, but it's still the human body. How can we, for me anyway, I love, how can I do this efficiently with what I've got?
Yeah. And, you know, talking about Ninja Warrior, it kind of makes sense to me that the parkour community would kind of see him as a bullshit version of what they're doing, and it's kind of probably frustrated that it's garnered so much more popularity than parkour has done itself. But, you know, Ninja Warrior was obviously something that we were watching on, like, Challenge for so many years.
Brian Blessed.
Yeah, out of Japan.
Sasuke was the original. Yeah. And so that's really the thing is, the UK is the most gimmicky Ninja Warrior around all the world, because I think it's in like 15 or 20 countries now.
Even more than America.
Way more than America.
Really?
America, they allow the athletes that do the best, they get them back on the next year. They make the competition harder. They give them prize money. The UK,
it's just a spectacle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the UK, there's no prize money, and then they don't let competitors on from previous years. Very rarely do they. Even though, which I find so mindless, Rochelle, the host, will, after someone's run, if they fail and they fall in, she'll go, oh, well, we'll see you next year. I know people that quit their job, train full time to come back next year, don't get allowed back on the show.
Wow.
And then there's no prize money, even if they did how they did. And half the competitors are dressed like toilet rolls and all sorts of things.
Yeah, that was me when I did it.
Yeah.
But I did it for exactly that reason. I didn't take it seriously at all. I just did it for fun.
And there's a place for that. There's a place for that. But what would be nice is, at the highest level, if they actually treated it, these are athletes.
Well, that's what America does.
That's what America does, 100%.
And that was sort of strange to me, and I guess that's a completely different.
It's still Americanized, like there's still that.
It's very Americanized, over dramatic. But, you know, I guess we're coming from two completely different places. You know, you're coming from being a free runner and doing parkour and being an athlete and seeing this as another challenge, whereas I was a jiu-jitsu guy who did it as a joke.
Yeah.
I think that there was
test your grip in a different way, though. I guess that's
no. I literally just did it for a joke. There was literally no challenge.
Cool.
I just did it for fun. And
how do you do in it? Sorry, I forgot.
I made it through to the second round. I did pretty badly.
Yeah,
but somehow I made it through to the second round. And then I went out on the curtain slider.
So you got to the wall, or you just
no? I didn't.
I got
I got the furthest, fastest, and one of mine.
Got you, yeah.
And which the bar was very low because I was not going fast. I was like stopping in between obstacles and like hyping the crowd up and stuff.
Yeah. You fed into that what it was, like the spectacle that it tries to be.
Oh yeah, I was absolutely and I can only imagine that you must have been backstage going, "This is everything that's wrong with the show."
And I don't hate it because I know that's what it's signed up to be, but at the same time, I'm like, what it is in Japan, and I don't know if you remember like
Yeah.
the original Sasuke and Nagano,
Yeah.
like the fisherman.
Yeah.
You know, I just
Oh, yeah,
remember- legend. You
Yeah.
know, and like the rope climb at the end, and the shot is it gets to the night time and the big lights, and that's how they do it in America as well with Mount Midoriyama. Just have a bit of place for both, and it just wasn't the UK.
Yeah.
It was just like, yeah, it's like text in a pound and you can win 65 grand or a car or whatever, and it's like, oh, so you can text in and win, but the actual athletes get absolute pittance, and they won't even provide me with vegan food and stuff like that.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
pretty crazy. Because I know that you didn't complete the final stage in that first. Were you only in the first season? Or you were in a few.
I've done 1, 2, and 4.
Okay,
I did. I got last man standing, which was the furthest.
Did you do that in every one or?
I did do it in every one, but there was another guy in the second series should have been DQ'd, and they didn't DQ him, and because they wanted a new winner, and they
Sure.
gave him the victory. They gave him the thing, but technically 1 and 4 I did, yeah. But I never completed the rope climb at the end on any of them.
Yeah, because I remember watching it, and you were so obviously far superior to almost everyone else who was on the show, because most of the people were people who were just giving it a go for a laugh, whereas you were this free running world champion who was coming in and was taking it seriously and was trying to do it in as an athlete opposed to a contestant.
Yeah, when I was, that's a good way to put it. I there's definitely other people that I never felt like the best on each stage, even though I'd get fast times and stuff. I was always like, there's other, because I find chin-ups fucking boring. I find like training for this stuff, I'm not into training for it specifically. I don't mind, I love hanging and gibbing and swinging on monkey bars and things like that, so I could do a little bit, but there are other athletes that literally would like schedule their whole training around
Like event training.
Yeah, proper for it. So as it got to the later stages and you see the other athletes around you, I knew there were other athletes that were more capable than me on every stage. But my competitive confidence, I think, is because I had a history with breakdancing, which helped me when I got into freerunning, because when you're battling at breakdancing, that's a different pressure when you got to throw down, and hit your moves and stuff like that. It gave me something that then worked for freerunning. And the freerunning experience gave me confidence performing as you've got one chance to do your run and there's cameras on you and all that stuff. When it comes to Ninja Warrior, and these people are just, training at their home gym or in their local 24-hour fitness, whatever, and then they're suddenly on TV with the cameras, that pressure's a lot. And so that really just, and I've got to give credit to this sort of the spiritual practice as I do as well, which kind of towards not giving one moment more prestige than another moment. Now that's of course I'm not saying I'm some like Iron Man stoic guy that can, no, you're still going to feel the pressure of it, but I was able to just channel it a lot better than the others. And so somehow I just always come out on top, regardless of feeling like I'm not the best athlete capable here. But
well, that's true of all sports.
I'm sure, yeah.
That there's this saying which is the better man will win, but I don't think that's the case. I think there are so many variables that go into success in a sport, and skill in that sport or physical attributes in that sport are only some of the variables. And your ability to problem solve on the spot, and your focus and determination and grittiness and mindset and all of these different things, as well as various different physical skill based and psychological attributes, all play together into
because of the risk
storm.
element involved. I think is such a huge that makes, because you could have who can hang the longest on a bar, and that's just going to be there's nothing involved in that other than straight strength, isn't it? And I think as soon as you add those elements of,
you put that bar 20 meters in the air, and it's another story.
It's going to be a different competition then. Yeah.
So did you feel like that's something that you innately had, or something that you specifically trained for, or that you were just prepared for through the various stuff that you've done?
Yeah, I think it's something that I kind of had, but because of my, I do have to think it's a lot of the getting into spirituality that just kind of gave me that edge. And I see it in other, someone like just more recently, like Poirier McGregor, and you just see how much more zen Poirier is, and like McGregor's trying to get in his head and he can't get in his head because he's just grown on so many levels, and it's like just more that where it's like I might win and I might lose, and I'm not too focused on either one. I'm just going to do the best I can do. And then in each moment when there was a few clutch moments where like I was too fatigued for something to hop over, so I ended up managing to swing, and I just managed to they call it a lache, where you throw from your arms, and get to the platform, even though I couldn't complete the obstacle the way it was designed, because I didn't kind of panic or whatever, those little moments. And I'm sure that's so common in jiu-jitsu as well, where you're getting tested, and if you're not getting tested, then you're not in the right field, and yet there's always a route to overcome it. And because you were calm, you found the path to overcome it. And I bet you've had that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And you say that that's to do with your spiritual practice.
And you don't necessarily, go on.
Yeah, I understand that you don't necessarily need to have a sort of a named specific practice in order to do that, but sometimes it can help a lot.
It's not like I'm meditating, and it's not like I'm Christian or something, but there's just there's something deeper in life. There's a game behind the game. The game is the obstacle course. The game is the person in front of you in a jiu-jitsu match. But behind that is this spiritual battle of like, I'm going to be tested, and am I going to be relaxed in that moment? I kind of, and all the, I know there's so much. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a reframing of the situation.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at something being consumed by the magnitude of a situation, you can reframe it as, this is actually, even though it may feel like it's, I'm doing this run for, in front of the ITV cameras, in front of 800 people
millions
in the audience,
of Saturday night viewers,
and I'm doing this huge thing on TV, but actually in the grand scheme of things, this is an insignificant moment within
a blip, man.
A blip in the on this ball of dust in the spiraling through the universe.
Totally.
So is that something that you did intentionally practice, or is that something that you found? Because I think that. You mentioned Poirier McGregor, and I think it's a good example of someone, because we saw Poirier fight McGregor the first time, and then 6 years later, I believe it was, he fights him again, and obviously the outcome is different, but more importantly, you can just look at Poirier and you can go, he's not fighting the same guy. And that comes from, like, he is a different person. It's not the training, it's not the techniques, it's not the conditioning he's done. That is a different human being.
On a soul level, it felt like he was a different presence to
and
Poirier,
and you can feel that, and I think that was only confirmed in that second fight, where he was able to get the job done again, and that sort of transformation over the course of 6 years, which isn't a short amount of time, but it's certainly not a long amount of time. We're not looking at someone 2 decades after another point. You're looking at only 6 years.
Which can be too late at that point for a career, right? You have to grow. If you're paying attention to life, you will grow at that rate.
Yeah, and you've got, I guess the question is, in that scenario, in your scenario, was that something that he put intentional practice into, be that research or be it meditation, I'm going to do this amount of stuff, I'm going to do this sort of practice, or was it something that he was or that you have been open to and just allowed to happen organically?
I think that's such a good question. And if I have to really relate it to something, I think I was vegan at the time. And so that was something that kind of spirituality led me to, was to seeing my own, not insignificant. Just one of my favorite Rumi quotes is that through wisdom is knowing I am nothing. Love is knowing I am everything, and between the two, my life moves. And I think when I got into veganism, and my beliefs have shifted now, but still within that ballpark of loving nature and being nice to the environment. And I just recognized that me running on a Ninja Warrior course in the scheme of things is fucking nothing. It's you know what I mean? Like there's wars going on out there. There's so many. I mean, we're in World War III right now, as far as I'm concerned. There's this psychological war that's going off. But there's starving children in Africa and all these cliche things. But realistically, the more I can tune into that, and I have to go through the emotional acceptance of that stuff, it humbles me. And that's what I think you saw in Poirier, was he was humble to a level where McGregor couldn't fuck with him. And that's the power of that deep humility. Like, that's rare, I think. And that when you do, like Khabib, he is one of the most, in my eyes, the most humble UFC, and GSP is humble as well. Well, truly, when you start thinking about it, you're like, actually, and that just gave them that edge. And it's like, there was something deeper. There's something deeper for Khabib. Like his spirituality is deeper than this stuff, and that gave him that strength. McGregor couldn't do anything in Khabib's head either. Like.
And it's actually so interesting again that we've just latched onto relating this principle to these MMA fighters. But you're talking about being humbled by experiences, and that being such a significant portion of your spiritual growth. And then you look at what Poirier has been doing since that first fight, which is he's been helping kids.
Yeah.
And when you spend half your time fighting and half your time trying to help kids, impoverished kids in your area, you realize you see all of this these terrible things happening, and you realize that you in a fight is so insignificant compared to that.
Yeah, and yet it allows you to tap into something deeper, which is a beautiful reward for that. Yeah, for that lesson.
Yeah.
Then you look at someone like, on the flip side, just to keep it relevant for your audience, someone like Dylan Dennis, who refuses to be humbled, and yet he gets humbled by a chocolatier or whatever it was.
Was he a chocolatier?
The guy that choked him out.
The security guard.
Yeah, apparently he was a part-time security guard. He was a chocolatier by trade. So.
Did you see Gordon Ryan invited him to ADCC?
No, did he?
So he's going to like the biggest show in MMA.
Did he accept it?
In jiu-jitsu, yeah. Because he trained jiu-jitsu.
I know I know that's his history, but he just feels like he's just fallen off completely.
No, not Dylan.
Oh, okay.
No, the security guard.
Oh, he invited the security. Oh, cool.
Because Gordon Ryan hates Dylan.
Yeah, cool. So he's getting him in instead. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
But yeah, so some people can't be humbled, I guess, and I think Conor's a great example of that. But then
he's just not, because that's, if you don't mind me diving into this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Conor was humble. Like when he lost in the past.
Oh yeah, he was one of the best losers.
He was one of the best losers.
He was an example. A really terrible example of how not to take a loss was Ronda Rousey. When she lost to Holly Holm, it was really awful, and it was a good lesson of how not to act.
It's still a lesson.
It's still a lesson. Oh yeah,
she's still in it, isn't she?
It will always be. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then Conor's first loss to Nick, which of course was that. Nate Diaz, was this really significant turning point in his career. And it was going to be really interesting because he came into that fight with this air of invincibility. Obviously, he'd been finished in the past, but it hadn't happened in the UFC. And he was champion, and he was smashing people. And then he fought Nate Diaz, and Nate was a big underdog, and Nate got the upset. And it was really interesting to see how he reacted and how it was. He was the better man, blah, 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 blah. Super humble. He was the absolute image of how to take a loss. Fast forward to his last loss, and he's sitting on the floor, unable to stand up because his leg has been shattered, shouting, "I'll fight you in the parking lot. Your wife's in my DMs." Oh, man. It was one of the most shocking things I've ever seen, just to see what a fall from grace and what a change in attitude, and just to show you what money and fame can do, to go from someone who could take a loss so well to take a loss about as badly as you possibly could.
And because there are physical laws at play in the universe, right? Like if I drop this bottle, it's going to hit the floor hard. If you're playing jiu-jitsu, you're playing with the physics of a human body. There are spiritual laws just as strong as physical laws in play that are there to teach us life lessons for us to grow. That they're always, the goal of them is loving, is for us to literally grow. And it's always the thing that hinders our growth is our lack of humility to our emotions. And so like a child, if you take like a lollipop from a child that's like a 3-year-old, they might just cry and they won't be bitter at you. Right? They won't blame you. They'll just humbly take their emotions. If you take a lollipop of like a 6-year-old, they might get angry and try to hit you or something like that. And at some point in our growth, we've learned a habit from a parent or some way to not process our emotions humbly. And when we don't, the law of attraction, the universe will bring us more scenarios to offer us the chance. Are you ready yet? And that's what happened. It will escalate and escalate. That's where, as far as I'm concerned, a lot of illnesses like, cancer and things like that, they're escalations of our lack of ability to truly see what's going on in our life until we need a bigger lesson and a bigger lesson. And as far as I'm concerned, that's what's happening to Conor right now, is he's getting these bigger and bigger lessons. And yet because every time he gets his dummy, he spits his dummy, and he's projecting his anger, his frustration at everyone but owning it himself, whereas he used to own it. And until he actually owns it, he can't get back to where he really wants to get back to. And you can fight and scramble all you want, and the universe is just there. Like, it's a spiritual law. Like it overrides everything.
Yeah, you can't beat this. You can't power your way out of this. Like,
as much as he wants to, yeah. And I see him, and especially that's what he's trying to do. I've seen him post today, and I'm the biggest Conor fan. I love this journey, and I still have hope for him. But he needs some humility, really. And he's in the gym, and he's like, I always get in great shape in Miami, and it's just all really basic muscle focused training. He's not intelligent. People dissed Ido Portal.
Yeah.
Touch but in the pot, right?
Yep.
Conor must have took that deeper than anyone ever thought.
Because he got rid of him and he was never the same.
That is like, no one's talking about that, but clearly looking back, that was the high, when he beat Aldo in 13 seconds, and yet he's training with Ido, who is as far as I'm concerned, as much as people want to hate on him, and I completely disagree with it, he will sharpen your axe as a movement. You'll go into the root of it. Like, he's a movement specialist. He's a generalist specialist, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, and he will sharpen your axe if you're into movement. He will make anyone move better. And I haven't gone deep into it with the Ido, but I can see that's what he's doing, and that's what he did. And then when you get a 13 seconds knockout because your reactions are so sharp, I always remember the videos leading up to it. There was one of them, and the Ido was throwing cards at McGregor in a boxing ring. And I'm not saying that's the one thing, I'm not saying, but when you see that's the type of way he's training, is I could just see that he was in a sharp place. And then since then, he's doing his strength and conditioning, and it's just not, what's strength and conditioning going to do for you? Like, you need to be, and on the flip side, he's not, the rounds that Poirier gets in the gym, in living in America, McGregor's not getting those rounds in a what's is he at ATT? Poirier is with
yeah,
it's with Masvidal, and I think Usman's moved now, but Usman was there.
AK maybe?
AK, yeah. It was absolute killers in the gym. You're turning up every day, and you're getting humbled because there's other heavier champions in your gym. McGregor's not even training with anyone else in the UFC, I don't think. Like, there's two ways to do it. There's the way McGregor followed his own true path of I'm inspired by Ido Portal. I'm inspired. He was talking about watching videos of gorillas at 2 a.m. Do you remember that? Right in the early days, Kavanaugh would say, he sent me a video of a gorilla and he's copying this stuff. And then to now, where he's trying to do more strength training and cutting more and more people out of his life, and not it's I just can't see it ending well from already where it's at, if he doesn't take some lessons.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk about Conor all day.
Sorry,
but,
yeah, no.
But at the same time, no. Like, I think it's, like we mentioned earlier, talking about concepts without having an application that you can relate it to is so almost frustrating. So being able to, I love what you're talking about, everything from the spiritual side to the physical movement side as well. And we have not just an example of the application of those principles, but such a high profile example of the application of those principles.
Yeah.
And he is such an interesting case study because it's like there is two different Conor McGregors. There's the pre-millionaire Conor, the super rich, beyond the level of just wealthy, but super wealthy, and prior, and it was that Nate Diaz fight. He got the win after that, and then I believe he got the Alvarez win, and I think it's around about then, and then it all kind of went downhill. And who knows what will be next for Conor McGregor?
I believe in him as he's in the dark night of the soul right now.
Do you think he ever comes out of that?
Maybe not before his career's up.
Yeah,
not unless he gets.
It's hard to see, isn't it? It's hard to imagine. I don't think
now's the turning point if he chooses to be. Yeah, and if he gets the right people in it behind him, and that could be Ido, it could be Eckhart, some spiritual. I don't know who it is, but
I just can't see it happening. I think
he's a therapist, basically.
Yeah, I think so. But like you said, you need to be humble enough to open yourself up to other people, and I think he's got to a point now where I don't know if he'll ever be there.
It's hard to see, yeah. Until I do believe it, and I think it could take 5-10 years because he's a switched on guy, isn't he? And he's ahead of the curve with a lot of stuff. Just now, he's fallen a bit. He's lost in the sauce, but
it's so hard to where does the drive come from? This is a guy who came out of poverty, and the drive that gives you to be the best and the single-mindedness focus, and to go from where he's gone. And that's why he's such a I think that's why he's such an interesting character. It's almost a bit of a Mike Tyson scenario, where you go from nothing to being so famous and so wealthy. He's a lot smarter with his money than Mike Tyson has been in the past, but he's sort of at this level, and there are divergent paths that they've both been on, but it's hard to see him ever getting back to what drove him in the first place.
Yeah, it's going to be different this time. I believe he's as hungry, but I just don't think he's as because he's not as humble. It makes him not as spiritually smart, which is we're divinely guided. Like when you follow your passions with a pure, and it leads you to great places in life. It leads you to have where we are, because we don't care what people are into. We like what we like children. You built your amazing den garage because of your passions.
Yeah,
and that didn't matter what anyone else thought. And if you lose sight of that and you start chasing something else that's not actually in your soul's desire, there's just these like bowling barriers, what they called when you bowl, bumper plates, whatever they are. They go gutters, up, gutter things, gutter protectors. They go up, and it's if you don't take the lessons, it's just a tough time.
Yeah, no, super fascinating stuff. Continuing on talking about your journey through, parkour and free running into Ninja Warrior, at what point did you sort of divert away from that, that being your main focus or that being your main goal?
Truthfully, towards the end of my kind of parkour, towards the end of my 20s, I got into veganism, and I always thought, like, how can I be so focused on this physical stuff when there's a lot more issues in the world? And it was kind of, none more self-righteous than the recently converted. Like, you get into something, you're like, but it felt, this is more important than me. I need to be of service. We need to somehow use my life to be of service to something I believe in. And so I kind of used it towards that. But after a few years, my body I started to sense a decline in my body. And it's kind of twofold, because when you're doing free running in your 20s, I didn't break any bones, but I had a couple of meniscus tears in my knees, which I had surgery to remove the torn bits. And that's, took a few years out of my kind of career. But you get back, and in your 20s, you can kind of recover. You get a bit older, and you start messing with nutrition, and you start messing with it potentially the wrong way, which I might have been doing with that. It starts to highlight the issues in the body. And so I started to get these niggles, which started to make it harder for me to train. And essentially I could train just enough to peak for a Ninja Warrior competition, but I couldn't train to actually build a base that could actually expand. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like I could tune into everything I built in my teenage and 20s, but I couldn't go beyond that. I couldn't progress to like a peak that I was after.
Well, you had a ceiling because...
Exactly. Yeah. It set a ceiling. My lack of... And this is when I started to identify this is biomechanics, because I walk quite duck-footed. My feet are pointing out. So when you start jumping duck-footed and you're jumping off 10-foot building and landing on another wall with a lot of impact, and your biomechanics aren't out, well, no wonder my cartilage was worn through or broke, because it wasn't... You can do that stuff. There are athletes with good which I'm able to identify now, and even David Bell, the founder. Now, with my new sort of biomechanical locomotive, I can understand what's a healthy biomechanics. He's an incredible mover. Now, back then, it was just a intuitive, I like the way this guy moves. Now, it's like, I understand why I like the way he moves now, because it's in alignment with nature's design of how we should move. Because I think I did handstands I was so fascinated with movement. I was spinning on my knees to Billie Jean when I was a 5-6-year-old kid. I learned to handstand when I was 10. I taught myself to walk on my hands, and I could do like from crow pose up to handstand at 10 years old. I was just fascinated, but I had no form. So my feet would curve over like scorpion over, and my core was completely switched off, and I kind of compressed my lower back. And I think this set off a chain of events because I was doing... There's a reason for form. In martial arts, they do so much form drilling in karate and things like that. And in gymnastics, they do so much form drilling. Now, as free runners, we're like, fuck that. Like, I don't want to drill something over and over. And what I always liked about free runners is if you took a silhouette of a gymnast, all the silhouettes would look similar, other than the body shape, but the movement would look the same. Whereas with free runners, you could silhouette them and you could tell which free runner it was by the style. that comes down to biomechanics. There's a reason in gymnastics they all try to make, because the body is the strongest if we follow a certain path of least resistance to get to that strength. You can't just have your own. There's obviously a small room for wiggle room, but there's not much wiggle room in gymnastics. You have to follow a form. If you want to be able to do an iron cross, there's a specific way for the body to be able to do that, because it's an absolute maximum performance movement. Whereas with free running, lack of discipline, whatever, and there was no blueprint out there and no one to guide me. So it's great. I could look different and I could move in my own unique way, but eventually, inevitably, you hit, again, these like kind of bowling alley boundaries where my body's like, my knees are hurting, my ankles are hurting, and all these other issues. And that led me to look at biomechanics and got into that journey, because I always loved mathematics and I always loved movement. And that kind of, for me, blends the two. And it highlights my own issues, because there's nothing more joyful to me than free running and jumping between walls and being confident in my body to take it, and running around mountains or hiking, multiple day backpacks with a 20 kilo bag on your back through the mountains. These things all require a fully functioning, strong, healthy body. And understanding biomechanics for me is the path to that.
And, something that you really said that was really interesting that you said there about form and the importance of form. Do you think that the correct form is universally correct, despite because one thing, when I say that, I'm going, but surely not. Basically,
it depends on what you're doing, because I think with jiu-jitsu, there is because you could have a bigger core and smaller limbs, and that would be what's optimum for you would be different. But when it comes to running, which is the most simple, like, human task that the body's designed to do, I think there is. Now, obviously, you could look at the form of all the best marathoners of all time, and they probably have slightly different form. But I do think that there is an optimum way for all humans. I guess the thing is, because the body's molded to find tension the way it finds tension from the way we've grown up with the shoes we wear and certain other injuries that we've had. So it's like, I see I watch the Olympics, I absolutely love the Olympics, and like 400-meter champions, and their feet are completely duck-footed. And I'm like, well, I'm duck-footed and it hurts, and they're fine and winning gold medals. So there's obviously some semblance of within that. But I do think when we look at longevity cases with running, and there's the GOATA, I like GOATA because what they've identified here, GOATA stands for greatest of all time athletes. And they talk about the 4 tribes, and they talk about the greatest of all time athletes like Michael Jordan and Babe Ruth and these great American athletes. Then that's one tribe. You've got babies in the way they move. You've got centurion marathoners, so people who still run marathons in their 90s and 100 years old.
Wow.
And then you've got tribes people, Amazonians that have never worn trainers and never sat on a sofa or slept in a bed. And they all have similarities or complete overlap of the way that hallmarks of movement that they all follow. And that makes sense that we should look at them for optimum longevity, for if that's what we're after, and fluidity. And so it's certain traits like when they walk, the heel turns away, whereas a lot of us walk and our heel comes in. And so that means that the hip's rotating inwards, when actually it was kind of designed, when you see the way babies crawl, you see the people that can run marathons when they're still 100 years old, there's a reason they can do it. Their hip turns the way it was maybe designed to turn. And so they don't have hip problems, and yet there's a huge case of hip problems in people, knee problems. There's all these joint issues that we have in society today as a product of removing ourselves from nature, wearing soft shoes that have allowed us to get away for 10 years walking with a bad pattern. But then in 20 years' time, then it starts to add up, and we have to have hip replacements and all sorts. So there is hallmarks of movement with these 4 tribes that GOATA identified, but that is to apply to something like walking and running, whereas with BJJ, I think it's a different discussion that I'm not an expert in.
Well, it sounds like that there must be a core of this is the human body, despite the small variations in it, or not so small.
Despite
the small or not so small variations in it, if you have ankles, knees, hips, a spine, and you're built like a Homo sapien, there's going to be some core principles that will always be more efficient.
Do all cats walk the same? Do all horses run the same? They're pretty similar. Like, do you know what I mean? Within a small thing, they're pretty.
But then you'll also find the rebuttal to that would be the variations between cats and horses. The genetic gene pool is much smaller, so there is much more difference between two random humans than two random cats.
How about a tiger and a cat? They both,
that's
you
true.
could probably silhouette them and they'd look pretty similar.
And then the other thing, that I wanted to ask about the GOTA stuff, because, I have heard about that before, and I know that there's a lot of people who are big proponents of it and others that are critics of it.
Yeah.
Do you believe that is a causation or correlation between, stuff like the way, the example that you gave? Is it is it that the people who run in this style make it to 90 years old still able to run marathons, or is it that they're the only people who made it there because that's how they did it naturally? Is it which came first? Was it the running style that allowed them to do it, or just they happened to run like that and that's what allowed them to do it?
It's just the same thing. I think they're the luck of the draw. They're the lucky ones that didn't have they didn't play football and get that slide tackle injury that then left them walking slightly limp. Because if you get an injury and then you don't rehab it properly, right? What is proper rehab? Who fucking knows? You know what I mean? Then you're left with your hip might turn 5 degrees out, and it's like if you have a car and two cars exactly the same, and one's axle is bent 1 degree and one's isn't bent, which one's going to go further?
Yeah.
It might be small difference, but one of them is going to go further, and you can guess.
And it's exacerbated over time.
Exacerbated over time. So if you have an injury that you don't fully realign your body, or you have an emotional trauma from childhood and your stomach's locked up, so you can't access your core, so, this, because it's not just physical, it's emotional as well. Or you wore soft shoes your whole life, so you were allowed to walk duck-footed because it didn't force you. When the outside edge of your foot is the strong side that needs to, where we should be walking if you follow Weck, or even go to talk about that stuff as well. But when you wear shoes, it doesn't. There is no differentiate between the inside and the outside, or the front and the back. People talk about heel striking and all that stuff on the foot. The foot's such a magical piece of equipment, and yet we put it in a shoe with a flat bottom and a sponge on it, and we walk, and so that creates all sorts of other things. And this isn't. I'm not saying just get rid of your shoes, wear barefoot shoes, and it will fix everything. Because absolutely, that's a minefield as well. You need to undo the work mindfully as well. But I do think that these hallmarks that GOTA have identified are good things to aim for, but at the same time, their methods that they teach for getting to that are still so new and not proven yet. So I think they've identified something fascinating that we should all look at, but then I think that we shouldn't be stuck in any dogmas of okay, because they've identified it, therefore they're right about how to recreate it.
Sure, they identifying what makes an athlete great is one thing. Applying that is a very different thing.
It's very different. And what can't be seen, because they've identified what we can see.
Yeah.
They've identified the end of the limbs, the heels, they can see flick away, and the way the spine moves a bit. But they can't see the transverse abdominis, the core engaging, connecting the upper and the lower body. They can't see the way their breathing pattern works. They can't see where the breath is going inside the body. Is it in the diaphragm? Is it in their upper back? So it's just a small piece of the puzzle. It's a cool piece, and I find it fascinating. But yeah, like you say, it's not the only. It's not safe just to go. Yeah, they have the answers then.
So who is just talking about GOTA? Who is this? Like an individual or a group or a organization that are kind of pushing this methodology?
Yeah, I think they're from the East Coast in America. One of them kind of was learning stuff from David Weck, so Weck method stuff. I think Gills is his name, and they've definitely identified something cool. There's a book, he's mentioned a few books, and I got some of the books and read them myself. Ageless Spine, Lasting Health, Ageless Spine, something like that. And when you read these books, and this was probably the start of where he got the idea from, and it shows all these people in Africa and India, and these like 70-year-old women that are working 12 hours days, tiddling the fields. And it's like the fact that they can work, like anyone listening to this, do you think you could work 12 hours till in the fields, or is your back or your knee going to hurt or something like that? Maybe some of us are fine with that, but there was this book kind of identified the way that these people stand and use their spine, and the way they hinge from their hips rather than from their lower back, which a lot of us learn to do, and the way they put their weight back into their glutes rather than just the way they sort of use their body. That was in this book, and it was to help us with our spine. And he'd read that book and got some ideas from that, and then he pieced some stuff from Weck, and then he looked at slow motion, because slow motion footage is only 10 or 20 years old. So even that as something we can do. And when we can look at Michael Jordan in slow motion, like back then no one was doing that. And then the current mainstream perspective on biomechanics is always 30 years or so in the past, and for that to change, it's always going to come from the fringe. It's not going to come through the rankings of collegiate people, because in universities you're just studying what the professors are telling you to learn, and that's what they're getting the NFL people. And we've got more non-contact injuries than ever before. So whatever is the mainstream narrative within football in the UK, where all these football players are getting career-ending injuries from no contact whatsoever. Like, there's a real crisis going on, and it's the way we look at the body. And this goes back to the point about Connor is, just putting on muscle, just doing more, rows or something like that. Like, if you're not looking at the body as a whole and you're just chasing muscle, you do strongman training, and that stuff is it's completely ironic in a way. Is that stuff is looked at maybe a bit more like brute and barbaric, and the calculated barbell stuff is looked at as more precise, and yet that's missing what the strongman stuff does, because it calls on so much more of the body to be engaged, which then starts to build the whole body as a system. And then you look at things like the fascia and how that network builds, and that if you're doing barbell stuff and it's compartmentalizing your muscles and separating parts of your body, and it's training separating parts, it's training your body to work separately and segmentally. Whereas with strongman stuff, your body's training to work as one whole system. You have to put your jaw into a lift, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like there's the old natural ways, which may look odd or whatever, and yet there's so much lessons in them. And these new ways which they're currently doing for rehab for top athletes now that aren't working, there's a reason. But of course, the coach might blame it on dehydration or lack of sleep, and not themselves, because they don't know any better, and they don't know any of the systems, and they're not trained to look at something like GOTA or Weck method or flowbility or something to that.
Well, the word that they love to use there, of course, is isolation exercises, right? Which, when you actually think about what that word means, you go, why the hell would I want to do that? Right?
Yeah.
And the only way that you can actually see, without having some very specific goals when you're doing
you're
this stuff.
You're a bodybuilder.
Well, this is
then you're not an athlete that's running.
That's it. The only time that's going to be is exactly what I was thinking. The only time where those things are going to be relevant is when you are trying to build muscle, and it does not matter how your body works as a whole.
Totally.
Because, and I've had this discussion with a few people. Bodybuilding is not a sport. And I remember having this argument like way back when I was doing PE, GCSE with having this argument with my teachers and having it with other people who do it. And I think there's a lot of things that you can't classify as sports, and that's okay. People get really offended if you take away this title of sport. They get very offended. But nothing, I believe, is more true than bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is not a athletic pursuit in any way, shape, or form. It is a purely physical. It is modeling and nothing more. Even though the method in which you get to the build that you have, and that's not to say that it takes anything away from that.
Absolutely not.
It doesn't. Like what these people do is unbelievable. These guys are huge. They're shredded. They train,
and they know a lot about the body.
Unbelievable knowledge about the body. Unbelievable knowledge about nutrition. These top guys have unbelievable knowledge about hormones and say steroids and stuff like that. Like, it's a taboo subject, but you can't compete in the top levels of bodybuilding without being on steroids. And these guys are doing it in an intelligent way. They're not just shooting some stuff that they've got off some guy in the gym, even though they might be shooting some stuff that they got off some guy in the gym. But there's a lot of knowledge and understanding of how the body works in many aspects. And bodybuilders are some of the hardest working athletes, and some
Totally.
of them. And I have friends who are bodybuilders, and you listen to what their diet's like a few months out, and there isn't no one who is going through. I don't care if you're cutting weight for MMA fights. There is no one that goes through the level of strictness and the specificity of what someone's eating, when they're eating it, how they're eating it, than bodybuilders. With that being said, they're not athletes. And their body is not designed to do anything performance-based. It is, in fact, when you see a bodybuilder on stage, when you see him performing what he trains his whole life to do, you are looking at that individual at the weakest moment in that you're ever going to find them
Wow,
in.
yeah.
They're dehydrated.
That's the point.
I can tell you right now, their joints are aching because they have so little fluid inside of their body that the synovial fluid in their joints is almost completely gone. They are in pain. They are lethargic. They are tired. When you see a bodybuilder on stage and you go, look at that guy. He looks like, he looks like the Hulk. That guy is not very well. He is ill. And if he doesn't rehydrate soon, if he doesn't start eating carbs soon, he is not going to survive very long. And it's important to understand that if you're doing bodybuilding training and you're not using the body as a whole, you're not training for performance, you're training purely for looks.
And that goes back to, that's the kind of a perfect metaphor for how most of the physios in the mainstream industry looks at the body, is muscles and joints and bones, and they completely miss the fascial network, which is I think where people like Weck and Flowbility and them are coming up with a new understanding of the body. Another guy, Chong, from Secrets of Athleticism. And that whole thing, the fascia, because myofascial release is probably quite big in your world, right?
Yeah.
MFR, foam rolling on the crossballs. That's huge. So we understand we're like kind of poking the fascia, but we don't really know. And so the fascia is that kind of sheath over the muscle that's kind of like a Spider-Man suit behind the skin, but on top of the muscle that connects everything. And I think when you're doing something like strongman, and you're utilizing the body as a whole, you're calling the fascia, that Spider-Man suit, to light up as a whole. And so it's like getting reps of working as one full system. And I'm sure in BJJ, when your heel hook, you're gripped on and you're grabbing, your whole body is engaged, right? It's not like you're not tense, like you're flexing a muscle, but you're engaged. And it's that, like a cat when it's before it pounces, and it's like that, and it stretches. They call it pandiculate when dogs, when a dog stretches and it does down dog and its whole body's like,
you see the muscles like go through a tension through the entire body,
through the entire network, and it kind of vibrates. And so they're not so much on fascia. I think what they do is fascia based, but without being so scientific about it. My practice with Flowbility, which involves breath work and the core, the TVA. Even back to which Gracie was it who did the
Hickson.
He's doing the breath work when he's getting the stomach rolling, stuff, which looks like fancy stomach rolling, but actually that's muscle control, and that's kind of the central cog of the whole fascial network is in here. And I sent you when you pulled your pec, David Weck's, because that's when we first met, and I saw your stuff, and you had the old Weck method propulsors, and you had the rolling rope stuff. I'm like, man, there's not many people. Do you know anyone else in the UK that was on that stuff?
When I started doing it, no.
How did you even come across?
I have no idea.
You don't know how you found
I think it's one of those things where in life sometimes, something just gets put in front of you.
You just trust the whim.
And to be honest with you, I have no idea why I got it. Looking back, one thing that I believe now, even though I still do, I like to do pull-ups, and I like to do rows, and I like to do kettlebells, and I like to do, strongman stuff and sandbags, and I like to lift heavy. But at the same time, I understand the importance of incorporating really movement-based stuff where your body is working as a whole. And the stuff that I do with the Weck method stuff, which is mainly, to be honest with you, the rope stuff, is the stuff that, obviously before I was injured, was part of my everyday practice, and doing club swing and stuff. That's the main stuff that I've taken, even though I play around with some of the other stuff that Weck, and I continue to want to do that. The stuff that I do with, go on, sorry.
No, I was going to say because I get the pulses, there's not really much crossover to what you do.
Just because there's no...
there isn't much yet. I'm sure someone might be able to come up with some kind of
It's just with the propulsors, it's and that's kind of what Weck was really onto, and we'll talk more specifically about Weck and you going out and all of that stuff in a minute. But when Weck, he's the king of locomotion, is movement. Because moving, and we've already spoken about, running is this primal human movement, which if you can run well, body works very well.
It's the primary design of the skeletal muscular system. As we see it,
100%.
First is to get designed to move our brain, our consciousness to another location, walking and running. So the pec is designed to pull the arm forward so that I can walk. that's its first design. Then it also does other stuff as well, whatever, you know. But
yeah, and that actually makes sense when you look at it from not only an anatomical and biomechanical perspective, but when you look at it from a anthropological perspective, how important walking and running was to us and how our body has evolved. And you know, that's how we used to hunt. We used to use persistence hunting, where we just simply outrun. You know, the fact that we don't have hair, the fact that we have the ability to sweat through our skin in the way that we do, our ability to regulate, you know, our bipedalism, opposed to all of the other primates, is all to do with running. But with that being said, we go back to the first thing we talk about. Fight and flight are two opposite opposing yin yang things. That's all about the flight, where I only do the fight.
Yeah.
So I didn't see the application in the in the propulsor stuff, even though, you know, when I started following Weck and he was talking about running a lot, I was like, you know what, maybe I want to start. Maybe I want to start trying. And I haven't got to that point yet, and it's still something on my mind because my knees, you do jiu-jitsu, your knees are going to be crap. And I was like, I don't want to risk risk messing my knees up.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, I know people who run a lot and they're absolutely fine. And it was of my opinion that the people who can do that are people who have run from a child and have always continued to run. So...
I completely see why that's the perspective.
Yeah, it was of my belief. Well, it's slightly changed now, to be honest, but it was of my belief that when you stop running for a number of years, 5 or 6 years or more, you lose the ability to do it, and trying to regain that, you'll never get it. Nowadays, I'm starting to change my opinion slightly based on some of the stuff that we've already spoken about, and a lot of the stuff that you put out, which is about actually maybe if I can teach myself to run correctly biomechanically, maybe I can still do it. And with some of the knees over toe stuff I've been practicing, you know, my knees feel. The last 2 weeks that I've been doing seminars is the first time in about 6 years that I've taught classes without knee pads on. It sounds stupid. It's a really big deal for me. It's very huge, similar. Yeah.
Anyone with knee pains.
And I'll still roll with knee pads on, and I compete with knee pads on, even though last time I competed, usually that would be the only time I wouldn't wear knee pads. I would never, ever spar. And then we're talking about 5 or 6 years. I would never spar without knee pads on, ever. And I would not teach even without resistance. If I rocked up the class and I didn't have my knee pads, I wouldn't show techniques. And in the same way that it was such a big deal for me when I started lifting sandbags without a weightlifting belt on and squatting without a weightlifting belt on, that was a massive, and I didn't even realize that. I was like, oh my God, I haven't been putting my belt on. That was really cool for me because it showed that I'm really making a quantifiable improvement in the health of my body. But, you know, the last week I've been teaching classes and being happy with my knees touching the ground. So my knees are definitely getting better, and I'm thinking more about starting to try and get into running because it was something that I would like to do. But anyway, that's kind of good. That was just based on not using the propulsors and the stuff that I was doing from Weck. So anyway, we go back to me rambling on a lot there about me finding Weck originally.
Yeah.
The stuff that I believe about Weck and biomechanics and movement now, 5 years ago, I would have thought was complete bullshit. Honestly, I remember that I think changing how you feel about something is a sign of growth. I think that if you change everything about what you think about everything every 5 years, that will probably be a little bit crazy, a little bit mind destroying. But really allowing yourself to be open-minded and humble enough to truly change your deeply held opinions about some specific things is really important. And if you don't change your mind about anything in 5 or 10 years, then I think you're probably wasting your time. And there was a time where I thought barbells was the be-all and end-all of strength training. And that I remember being part of the, bashing the Bosu ball. The Bosu ball was this pile of shit, and it was, you'd see someone doing a squat on a Bosu ball, and look at this arsehole doing this absolute crap. And any movement-based stuff, if you didn't have a barbell in your hands, I thought that you were wasting your time. And I look back at that myself from there, and I think, what a closed-minded, an incorrect approach, in my opinion now. And for that reason, I'm not sure why I was interested when I first saw Weck. It was something about him. I think that at the time he was a bit more outwardly crazy. He's really chilled out in the last couple of years. I don't know if you've noticed.
He goes through waves.
Yeah. But he was sort of a lot more. I still think he's mad, and in the best possible way. But he was really, when he was putting videos out, and I think I started following him, he probably had 3,000 or 4,000 followers, maybe even less than that. And
we had 2 glasses.
Yes. Oh yeah, and maybe 3 sometimes.
Yeah,
if the sun was out.
Yeah.
And he was just talking about movement. And do you know what it was that really grabbed me with David was watching him move. You know, he
can't deny it.
You can't deny it.
Yeah.
You can't deny it. He moved well. He ran well. He was agile, and there's just something. And I think it's a testament to actually what he can do. The fact that I didn't know what I was looking at. I wasn't an expert in the sort of movement that he was doing. You know, I wasn't watching it. It would have been different had I watched him do these incredible movements on the ground like in a grappler, and I would go, wow, he moves great. You're telling me he isn't a black belt, he hasn't been training for 10 years? But just to watch the way that he moved, I was like, this guy might be talking some sense. So I bought the rope and I bought the propulsors, and I continued to follow him. And I used to play with the rope a little bit. And then as I got on more and more, and I started to understand what he was saying and how the body must connect with each other, I started to use the rope more and more.
It's like he's speaking a different language when you first come across him, isn't it? It takes a while. You like this, and then it's like 5% understanding becomes 10%. And like,
I still don't understand a lot of the stuff that he says, but I can just pick up, because the guy just goes in so deep, and his knowledge is just it's very much overwhelming to most people watching it sometimes, but. What an interesting guy. And I was planning to get out to California last year, and I really want to get out there and train with him, and I'd love to because I know he's worked with MMA guys, and I know he's worked with boxers, and he's worked with I know Christopher and David have been working with Jordan Burroughs.
all I see is gold.
Truly one of the greatest wrestlers of the modern era. But I haven't seen him working with any jiu-jitsu guys, so I'd love to get out there.
Well, you can be that guy. Yeah, if you need to connect, I'm sure you may have already connected with him. But
I really want to get out there when possible. Obviously, it's really hard at the moment, but I'd love to get out there and spend time with him and really just commit myself to his sort of.
There'll be
philosophy.
Propulsion in jiu-jitsu. There'll be a spot.
I have no doubt about it.
You find it together. Yeah.
So we've kind of started talking about David a little bit, but let's talk about your journey, because you have to. I think I might have been ahead of you by a month, maybe, but not very long.
Okay.
But similar sort of time. But then you went much deeper. You went out. So how did you first come across David?
So I actually I got into functional patterns because they were talking a lot about biomechanics and don't do yoga, it's bad for you, and lifting, squatting barbells is bad for you. And
so functional patterns was. Half of it where it says don't do yoga, I'm like, I'm absolutely on board, and then it says don't lift weights, I'm like, could not agree less.
It's so funny, isn't it? He's digging himself a very small, deep hole. I think he is. But anyway, I ended up going down that rabbit hole, and they speak a lot of sense, but then the methods for solving it, they've got some good answers, but it's very complicated. It takes a lot of equipment. It takes very precise cueing. It's very expensive because you got to pay a coach every time. You need one-on-one, and because unless you're doing it like 4 days a week, which is absolutely draining to the nervous system, you can't really make progress that sticks. It wasn't really anyway. I ended up getting banned from functional patterns.
How did you get banned from functional patterns?
So I was doing a thing at the time called the formula, and I wanted to basically. I thought I'd found the formula to fix my biomechanics in the fastest way possible, and that if I came up with a formula, I could share it with other people and they could do it as well. And it was just formula, 1.0. I'm on like 3.0 now or something like that. But it was
something that you've come up with.
Basically I'm trying to like solve human biomechanic crisis, because how many people like that sit in the pub and watch football would actually like rather play football, but they can't because their body's shut down. So they're like, well, I'll just drink alcohol. But we would all, how many of us have injuries that stop us being, training 100% or being able to train every day? Or if we can get to, a bit better biomechanical understanding, we can save old people falling down and collapse, when they fall down and hurt themselves. And at so many levels, this is good for humanity. And I'm not saying there's a lot of people out here trying to help the best they can. I don't think I'm going to come up with the system, but I think I can identify things within different systems and piece it together, kind of put the program of programs that can help people. And so at the time, the formula I was experimenting with was carnivore diet, because it was the least inflammatory. My body felt like all the inflammation melted away when I was carnivore with functional patterns. So I'm doing the biomechanical corrective exercises with the least inflammation in my body, with microdosing mushrooms and sometimes a little more than a microdose, because that also helps me get deeper into my body, along with a cold water immersion and a few other things that were in the formula. Because I thought I rented a flat in Bristol, and that's why I ended up moving here, where there's only 6 coaches in the UK, and one of the best coaches in the UK was in Bristol, Bobby. So I was going to go train with him 4 days a week, whilst eating this way, doing the microdosing before sessions and all this stuff. Anyway, he got wind of it because he's got a load of little birds out there that are constantly got their ear out for anything going off, and just said, no, you're not allowed to, what I've created not enough. Why do you need to add it with other things? And you're the first person to think of doing a certain diet while doing functional. Anyway, he's got a lot of anger issues, shall we say. Cool guy. I like him in a lot of ways, but he's got some stuff. Anyway, I'm obviously quite bitter about it. but anyway, he banned me, and it was, I was distraught then, because I was like, really believed in this practice, and I believe in what they're saying, and yet I've got no access to it. Like, what am I going to do? I thought I was going to be able to do. Anyway, what else is there? And literally, the other thing out there is Weck method. Like, that was the only other thing that's talking about locomotion and biomechanics, but in a completely opposite kind of way, isn't it? The way he trains it. And I thought, and someone had showed me that a few weeks prior, and I thought, well, fuck it then. And I just booked a flight to San Diego, and went and trained with David Weck, the founder, and ended up staying with him at his house for 2 weeks, and went to Joshua Tree, just me and him, just to download everything he'd learned into me, as much as I could understand. And that's the complete polar. He was like, if you ever come here, I'm going to call the police. I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? He was thinking I'm going to stalk him or some shit. I'm like, it was just the weirdest stuff. I was like, I'd love to come help you work on your biomechanical stuff and bring what I can bring to it. Anyway, Weck was the most inviting, supportive person. It was complete. And I thought, wow, that's funny how the universe works. It literally shielded me from this thing while offering me this.
It gave you I wouldn't even say a nudge. It shoved you
completely
away from one path onto basically the opposites. The complete polar opposite of the same coin.
Yeah, where functional patterns is very medicinal in its approach and very sterile, and whereas Weck method is fun and colourful, and
I feel like it's a lot more holistic.
It feels holistic in
general, and it's less, And it's funny when we talk about Weck, for people who don't know, obviously we've been referencing him a huge amount. For people who don't know who David Weck is, he's the person, I think it's almost annoying to reference him like this, but it will be the thing that relates to most people. He's the person who invented the Bosu ball. Mm-hmm. That's what he first did. That's how he first, that was his first big creation. And, since then he is a biomechanics and locomotion specialist, and he's come up with all of these crazy other ideas that other people have kind of jumped onto, and stuff like the rolling the rope, which is I feel like is probably one of his biggest exports. But we'll talk more about that. Yeah, we'll talk more about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like and it's funny because of his background in the Bosu ball and stuff like that. He's a much less commercialized version. Functional patterns feels very business oriented,
marketing, and,
whereas if they got whiff that you were using them to build something of your own, they were going to get super offended. Where I feel like if David had got word that you were doing this experiment, he would have gone, "That sounds awesome. Let me know how it goes."
Man, it would have been the opposite reaction. Yeah. So he's Bosu balls. When it came out, half of the fitness industry slandered it, which is probably why you got your opinion about it as well. It's you don't know how much we're influenced by other things. Now, some of them have retracted it. Some of them,
I bought one.
Yeah.
If you had told me 7 years ago that I'd buy a Bosu ball, I would tell you that you were completely crazy.
Man, that stands for both sides utilized, and it's about using both sides of the body, the left and the right, to grip the earth kind of thing. There's a lot of uses for it, but the same thing with the rope is both sides utilize the left and the right, and we can get into that if you want to get into that specifically. But just him as a human and an inventor, I think it's exciting, but there's no real proof of it working just yet. There's anecdotal stuff, but there's not one athlete that's fully trusted him on everything. And then because Jordan Burroughs trained with them, but then he didn't qualify for the Olympics. I think Kyle Dake, who's a functional patterns athlete, actually fought him, which was quite an interesting.
Yeah, it was really interesting because you know, I think it became this battle because I know that he's had arguments with, you know, David and Nordy have had arguments online.
Yeah,
and you know that Weck hasn't really done. You know, there was a lot more negativity that he was putting out before, and then at one point he just stopped and just put out that, you know, positivity. But I know there was this big thing between him and Naudi. So when Carl and Jordan were to compete to qualify for the Olympics, it became this battle of the movement experts between Weck method and functional patterns. But you can't do that.
The thing is, there is a distinct difference. There's a place for both of them, and functional patterns is more hardware, and I think Weck method is more software, and I think that's where the distinct difference comes in. And if they were to work together, it would be beautiful. But that's where I think I'm currently doing a practice which works almost as effectively as functional patterns, except I can do it at home as many days a week as I want with no coach, which is the flowability, which I think not many people know about.
I'd not heard of that until you just mentioned it today,
and that essentially is like functional patterns, except where functional patterns is so focused on rotational movement, flowability just trains bilateral movement, and they just trust that, and the rotation just comes naturally. And I found that with strongmen is you train like a big sandbag squat. You don't need to train the single leg squat. Like, I mean, you still do that stuff as well. And there's definitely a place for unilateral training and bilateral training, but they focus on bilateral training, which is both sides at the same time, kind of evenly. And as the spine decompresses because of that, then the spine allows for more rotation. So you don't need specifically the precise cues of functional patterns where it's all rotational training to get rotation. You can train just the whole body, and that kind of comes, which is, I guess, a deeper conversation. But Weck method is with the rope. It's training this pattern of movement, this figure of 8 path that's there. Then he talks about Locomotion 2.0, which is he's essentially saying that he's reinvented running. Not reinvented it. It's always been there in the body, but he's rediscovered it. Rediscovered is a good way to put it. And so he has got Kenyan athletes. He's got one coach in Kenya who's training his athletes that are all getting better times. Now, they've not won an Olympic gold yet, which is when you can actually safely say, there's the stamp. Weck method, Locomotion 2.0, it works. There's a world record because of his technique. That hasn't happened yet, but I just think we're in the infancy of the whole thing. And that's why I'm so excited and so committed, because it's a fun time to be around something that I think in the future, like the way everyone knows what the Bosu ball is now. In 10 years' time, everyone is going to know what the rope is. Like, I don't doubt that most athletes are going to warm up with a rope, you know, before going out to get their spinal engine. I've had rugby players that use the rope and they love it. And it's people that it's not for everyone, but those that touch it, that don't mind that little weirdness of rolling a rope but not jumping over it, they really appreciate it. And I think there's huge scope for the rope alone. The pulses itself, the only thing, and if I hope you don't mind if I'm going to jump into this now, is I think because the fascia is the missing link in the conversation, the pulses, which essentially he's saying that you punch down with every step you take, you punch both hands down rather than swinging both arms. You punch both hands down, and that downwards force of both arms goes down the connective tissue into your Achilles, loads your Achilles, and then it bounces you forward because it's connective tissue, and he calls it connective tissue recoil. So you're using gravity with your hands, boing. So you kind of swing, but you also punch down, and that's what the pulses train you to do. If you don't have the fascial network, which works like this Spider-Man suit to support it, because it's the Achilles, but it's also the fascia that gets loaded. The fascia grows kind of like vines up a wall, but it grows around our body, and it grows it literally appears like it grows from the fingers up and from the toes up. And this is what Secrets of Athleticism, a guy called Chong, identified from Tai Chi. He was into Tai Chi, and they talk about gripping the earth with your feet. And he came to the West and actually translated it in a biomechanical sense of when they're gripping the earth. If we were to live barefoot our toes have a natural tension in them. That's the fascia molding. And because we've worn trainers, our fascia hasn't molded and matured. And it's the fascia that makes us athletic. When that's matured and it grows, he says there's 4 stages of it, from the feet, the calves, up the hamstrings, then into the glutes. So it connects the foot and the glute connection. Then it kind of goes from the glutes to the abs and the core. I think Weck has got a incredibly molded fascial network on his body. So when he uses these techniques, it makes perfect sense, and you see it in him. And then I try the propulsors, and it just hurts my ankles.
Really?
Because I've never developed my fascial network. So I'm on this path of what systems out there that can develop that fascial network, and that's where I've come to Secrets of Athleticism and Flowbility. And they kind of, Secrets of Athleticism, Chongji, and he trains with Zhang Weili. So his stuff's proven in a sense with one athlete who was the strawweight champion before Rose knocked her out.
I think she's fighting her again for the belt.
Yeah, they've got a rematch, but you can't put fascia on the chin, and Rose is a ninja, so
might not work out.
Might not. I mean, I guess you can, but anyway,
not enough probably.
Not enough. He's not enough for Rose, thug. So I'm doing this training, which is all toe training. Well, mostly toe training, and it's learning. I don't know if you can see. Ignore my toe. Being able to do that.
Yeah.
Bend the big toe.
Yeah.
From that knuckle.
Oh, just from there?
From that knuckle, and don't move the other part of the toe. And that I can do it with that one, and I can't do it with that. And it's also doing it with the, so you can see the extensors. Mm-hmm. Those extensors are sticking out there.
Yeah.
If you look at all the top athletes, barefoot, those are permanently on, and their anterior tibial tendon is permanently on, even when they're relaxed. Now, if I'm relaxed, that normally switches off, and those aren't as visual.
Yeah.
That's a sign that their fascia is molded. So it's a sign that their fascia is matured, because they probably played barefoot in Brazil or wherever growing up, or Ronaldo in Madeira or wherever. Whereas a lot of the people that get injured all the time don't have that kind of those hallmarks of the extensors being permanently on and the anterior tib. And this can relate to the hand, because I saw you did the exercise where you put the band on the back of the wrist and you're pulling to get the extensors going.
Yeah.
So now the toes and the fingers work like aglets. So if you got an aglet is the cap on a shoelace. So that's what protects it. We have them on our DNA as well. I forget what it's
telomeres.
Telomeres, exactly. So the toes being actively engaged is like a telomere for the whole system. And you could look at it muscularly, or we look at fascially, right? If the toes are relaxed because we've just been in soft shoes the whole life, there's no tension at the end, which isn't pulling the whole network down and calling it, from the nerve. It goes really deep, really, but the nerve pathways, down the spinal cord, goes out to the toes and then back up. And I believe when there's active engagement there or in the fingers, it's sending signal that's then mapping out this fascial network that's building that Spider-Man suit of protection. And so when you're doing all the grip training, I think you're training the upper body fascial network, and then you can get into Weck's core fist stuff. When you're doing the toe training, which is towel curls, you do towel curls with the toe, but then you also do the isolation training where you're trying to bend at the knuckle and not just completely gripping. It takes a bit of training, but when you do like a minute a day and you feel how much it lights up your shin up here and stuff like that, there's something to this stuff. And like I say, back to the point is, I think Weck, because he chiefs like a bit, like, he likes clean stuff, but he's blazed a lot of the time. Well,
I remember him saying that he was on a $1,000, was it $1,000 a week of THC oil at one point?
Yeah, definitely at least that. Crazy.
It might have been more.
Did he say that publicly?
Yeah.
Okay, that's so. And I've heard one story where he just used to do that basically and stand on grass and just really like grip the earth and all this stuff. And you know how when you follow him for a period, you'll see chapters of his life where he's hell bent on one thing, do this, and every day he's doing it, and he's just plugging it into his body, and then he moves on. Like, his way of working is so like cool to witness.
Well, it is. It's quite incredible, and I think that you actually have some of those traits because you do a lot of stuff, and whenever you do it, you seem to go deep into it, and you're doing it every day, and you're doing it a lot. Yeah. I think that's a watered down version of Weck where you can imagine, the the thing that he's doing now with these 2 sticks, I can't wait for my shoulder to be better so I can have a play around with it. They look really, really, really cool.
I've only got one here, so
and you see him do it straight away, and you're just like, man, how is he doing that so cool?
I can see how it works. Yeah.
And seeing him do that, and you just know that he's doing that like 10 hours a day. He's just spending all day long. He's doing this. And a couple of weeks, he'll just be like, I've did something else.
And it's just he's downloaded the software. Then
it's done.
That's the way he works, because I really feel like his fascial network, because he's a 51-year-old man with a replaced hip, and yet he moves like the most fluid person.
It's unreal.
It's unreal.
You know what? Watching David move is actually like watching a cat move.
It's like a human cat, right?
It really is like
animal body.
The fluidity, where the tension.
The balance, the poise.
Exactly. Yeah. He's always in control of where he is in space. And, something I talk about a lot when I'm teaching grappling, one of the big things that people expect from me, because I focus so much on strength training, is that when they roll with me, I'm going to be tense the entire time, or like crushing the entire time, or squeezing the whole time. And it's the complete opposite of how I roll. I don't, when I roll.
Soft is hard or whatever. He always
100%.
Yeah.
And because, one, your output's too high. If you're tense the entire time, your output's too high, you're going to get tired. It doesn't matter how good your muscular endurance is, you're going to get tired. You also lose the sensitivity. Jiu-jitsu is, for me especially, one thing that a lot of the high level guys that I've rolled with, they've said that what allows me to do what I do is good reactions, good sensitivity to feeling the opponent. And you don't have that sensitivity through stiffness and through tension. You only have that sensitivity through softness and relaxation to really feel what your opponent's doing. Where, I like to roll blindfolded sometimes. I just close my eyes.
That's cool.
And, it's a really beautiful thing. And it's something that I've done, that I've been doing a lot more often recently, sometimes as much as just when I roll with someone who's not, super competitive. So instead I'll close my eyes, and there's almost, what's interesting about that, it sounds like a real detriment when you close your eyes, when you're rolling. I'm not boxing. I don't need, you need to rely on almost no visual cues, because when you make contact with someone and when you develop that sensitivity, truly, and it forces you, if you want to hear something in the distance, what do? You close your eyes, because it takes away one of the senses and it heightens the other one.
Yeah.
And, tactile and, the feel is another sense that we have. And closing your eyes is going to force you to be able to focus on that more. And when I'm rolling with my eyes closed, I can touch someone and grab a wrist. And because I know where the wrist is, I know where the elbow is, I know where the shoulder is, I know where the body is, which means that, I know where the hip is, which means I know where the leg is. And you can paint this picture in your mind of the entire human body, even though you can't see it visually, because you can feel it. And then you can feel the small reaction, and you know what they're trying to do, so you can counter it. And I just think it's what I was trying to say there is that I always teach, you want to go really gentle and really soft. And all of that strength you're building, that is to be used only when you need to. Only when it's time to turn it on. When that choke gets locked in, or when the person is driving into you, and the only way, softness is not going to work at this point. You've got to do everything right, but you need the power behind it. And that's how David looks, where everything is relaxed. It's tension only when needed, never when it's not needed. And that's how he moves. And it's so impressive.
Yeah. And I think it's that paired with the fascia, that maybe that's how it functions, but that's a really cool point. And that just reminds me of like when people play chess without the board. Two chess players, masters, and they can just say the move, and the other person can say the move, and they both know where the board is, but there's no board. That's
I've seen someone roll in jiu-jitsu. I play chess often. I'm not very good, but I do play chess often because I really love it. And there's so many connections to jiu-jitsu. But then at the same time, I feel like when you do something, when you go deep on anything, you see connections with it in everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
So naturally, I see connections with jiu-jitsu. But yeah, I'm terrible at reading the board just with the things. But
it's not there yet. Yeah.
But I've seen someone roll, and whilst they're rolling, someone's with a board on the side of the mat, and the guy's playing a whole chess game, and he's got. So you've got to remember, not only do you need to know the board.
Oh, he's playing chess while rolling.
The guy's
shouting out moves. Yeah.
The guy's calling the move that he's doing. He's going D4, and he's rolling. He's going E4.
No way.
And he's going, takes on this. And you've got to be able to remember every single piece on the board. And of course, there's, a and almost more potential positions of chess than there are fucking stars in the observable universe, something ridiculous like that, just an insane number. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even remember.
No, we're just chatting about Weck, but I just think he's a fascinating dude, and I think him proving what he's coming up with is yet to happen, and it takes enough people to commit to it and to trust it, basically, or eventually it won't be a choice. I don't think. I think it would be like, oh, who can teach Weck method here, because that's the path to athleticism.
Yeah.
But like I say, there is no one system that's complete in itself, and it's bringing together the different networks. So like I say, for me, Flowbility, Secrets of Athleticism, they kind of map the fascia and the biomechanics of the hardware. That's my hardware. And with some strongman stuff as well, to build the muscle, because you still want to do that as well, like connected muscle. And then I think Weck method for the software and the patterns, programming the patterns of movement.
Yeah, I think that is what it is. And one thing, when I do really heavy sandbags and combine that with doing rope, and we'll get on to talking about the rope, rolling the rope now, I look at it in the same way I do when I do strength training and do jiu-jitsu. So people ask, like, how do I get strong for jiu-jitsu? And I go, you have to train jiu-jitsu. You can be strong as an attribute, full stop, and that will be relevant. If you can squat 300 kilos, you are strong. Doesn't matter if you want to play golf, doesn't matter if you want to wrestle, doesn't matter if you want to do anything, you're strong. But you won't be strong specifically for that sport. There'll be some disconnect between 100%. Your overall strength as an attribute and your specific or quote unquote functional strength for the sport that you're talking about. So the way that I've always seen it is, the work that I do in the gym is building bricks, and then the work I do on the mat is taking those bricks and using it to build a building. If I have a load of bricks in a pile, cool, they're there, but they're not doing anything. And if I don't have any bricks, I can't build that building. So I always look at it, it's the combination of the two that allows me to essentially convert the strength into functional strength on the mat. And the more, and then there's different ways of doing that. I see a similar thing with the rope, where I'm building outside of it, and then the rope allows me to place the movement into a way that ingrains itself more organically with how my body wants to move.
It's referential points. So the rope teaches you these paths of movement that your body can tune into without the rope. So you'll be rolling and you'll find a position that one shoulder will roll back and the other roll under, and that will just be like butter. You'll have greased the groove so much with the rope that it will just come naturally, and that is what the rope just puts you on, these perfect paths of biomechanical efficiency that's there.
And I do want to talk about the ropes now because of all of the stuff, and for those who Weck has created so many things. He has the Bosu ball. When I first started following him, he was big on his propulsors, which we've mentioned them a few times. They're small little handheld cylinders,
Mentos
with
packet type.
Yeah, basically, with a metal
BB
shot
pellets,
inside of them, and they allow you to do all of these things that he does when he does his double down pulses and different styles of running styles.
It's like an exaggeration of just your fists, so that you can shoot, and that's what the rope does. It's an exaggerated,
and it gives feedback as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's the exaggeration allows your body to feel the feedback, and then you can tune into it without that exaggerated highlights the position. Yeah,
and then he has his RMT club, which is basically an Indian club, but again with metal shot inside of it, so it's moving in a slightly different way, and it's giving an audible feedback as well with some movements.
And it has that slow down, it has the centrifugal force, has a bigger factor because of the BB pellets and stuff. It's really cool how it works. Man,
I bought the, we won't get too much onto the club, but it was, I was speaking to you about it, and it was super expensive. It was like double the amount that it is, shipping it over. So anyway, I forked out and I bought it, and I could not be more happy. Honestly, I really did not think that I'd like it. I don't like plastic things. I like wood. I like metal.
Yeah.
I've got loads of Indian clubs that I train with, and I have metal clubs that I train with. And I thought, I'm not going to like this. It's made of plastic, but I want to find out. It is by far my favorite club to swing. but like not even close. The second I got it, I was like, damn, this, like the ergonomic design, it, like the weight distribution, and that's the difference between metal and wood and plastic, is that you're not going to have any weight going through the handle. The handle is thin, it's long, and then all of the weight's at the end. And I'm like, one of the most frustrating things about the shoulder injury is that I can't be swinging the club again.
Is it the acceleration and deceleration that feels good? Is that what's so special about it?
I don't even use, and I do it sometimes, you know, so trying to describe for those just listening how you know, the ways that you could use the RNT club in a way that you couldn't use a normal club. So doing, you know, swinging it and then stopping.
Yeah.
And as you stop, the you know, because the momentum is going in that direction, the metal shot inside is going to continue the move until it hits that far side. So it gets a very different bit of feedback when you are moving and stopping suddenly. And I do some of that. Most of the training that I do with the RMT club is normal swinging movements,
fluid, like,
where because there's no immediate stop, the fact that there's shot inside of it is completely irrelevant. But it's just the way that it swings, the weight distribution is just beautiful.
Because it's heavy at the end and light.
Just whatever they've done, they've just nailed it. It's like this perfect ratio of everything with that, just the 2 kilo, 4 pound club.
Yeah, that you don't need much, do you?
You don't need much with these. I love doing that and swinging it, and I do feel, you know, I feel very similar to how, you know, to how the rope is. So he's got the RNT club, and then he came out with the rope, and that's, of all of the things, the one that you've sort of latched onto and became an expert in, and certainly one of the most, you know, one of the top guys in the world when it comes to the rope. You have Way of the Rope, which is the company that you have in the UK selling ropes and instructionals and teaching and sort of pioneering different techniques. So what was it in the rope that you went, of all of the stuff that he was putting out there, that you went, this is the one for me?
So when I first saw Weck on Instagram, before I went out there, I didn't really connect with the rope. And I think that's how a lot of people, I saw the propulsors and I could see, they're talking about teaching you how to run differently. That's better for biomechanics and stuff. And I just wanted to go and learn the propulsors, but there's kind of three factors to Weck method, and that's the propulsors, the rope, and then the coiling core. And when I got there and they actually started teaching, it was a 3-day course to be Weck method qualified, and it was Chris Chamberlain Savage teaching the rope. And basically you have a handle in each hand, and it's kind of like a skipping rope, except that it's a thicker, heavier rope, and you have a handle in each hand, and you swing it and you never jump the rope. And the difference when you jump over a rope is your hands come down as your feet come up. So the body's just hovering in space. You're just floating in space, but you're not. That's not an athletic endeavor. It's good for cardio and it's good for training your calves and your spring. But if you see a tiger jump, it doesn't just squash its lower half and its upper half together. Whereas when you roll the rope and you swing the rope and you can feel the weight of it, as the rope rises, your hands come up and you extend your legs, and as it come down, you kind of see there's this natural bob where the lower half of the body and the upper half of the body learn to bounce together with the swing of the rope. And you see boxers, they skip, but then they also do these side to side, and that's essentially it. They're on that path then. And then so it trains the lower half and the upper body on the upper half to, over these hundreds of thousands of reps, which you can accumulate very fast, to move in sequence in well time, because it comes down to millimeters. The difference between like top athletes and average athletes is just the sequence in which their body can work together, and whether it's harmonized or more disharmonized. Now that's the up and down. Now the left and the right side, because you've got a handle in your right hand and a handle in the left. Now some people say, it's kind of like poi or some kind of rope dart or other thing, and it is like it's got patterns of all these martial weapons because they all follow the same biomechanical principles. There are going to be similarities in the way the wrists rotate and the shoulder moves and stuff like that. But what it does, because it's a rope, for one, it allows for error, in a sense that it allows, because it's slack, whereas if you were swinging a sword, it's just stiff. So it because it's malleable like that, that's kind of forgiving in a sense. But at the same time, because it connects your left hand and your right hand, they are not only are they connected through the inside of your body, through your chest, down your arm, they're now, there's a circuit been completed down the outside of your body, whereas with a rope dart or a poi, this doesn't happen. So your left and your right hand are talking to each other. So when you're rolling rope, you're doing dragon rolls or these different maneuvers, your left and right hand have to work in unison or sequentially efficiently. Otherwise, the rope's going to smack you in the back of the leg or on the head or something like that. So if your left and right hand aren't perfectly timed, an error will happen and you'll get a slight whip or something like that, and you'll learn about it. And the body, without the mind having to think, will avoid that. Like naturally, you do 5 or 10 minutes a day, and then you leave it till tomorrow. You come back 5 or 10 minutes, and you just notice your body just learned. Do you notice the same experience where you weren't overthinking it, but you were just trying, kind of rolling, and the body naturally became more and more efficient over time? And because the left and right hand are talking to each other, that then, the left hand connects to the right hemisphere, the right hand connects to the left hemisphere of the brain. So it does all sort of mental mind things as well, in terms of putting you into or taking you out of the logical brain. If you can be too left-minded, an intellectual, it can pull you out of that. So there's so many different elements to what the rope does that I noticed. But it was just because the fact that they're both connected and it completes this circuit between each hand, that was probably the most profound thing to experience in what it does. I don't know what you experienced with it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I had... it's one of those things where you need to already appreciate biomechanics in some way. You need to appreciate movement and fluidity of movement and sort of these circular shapes that we create and all of that stuff, because I've had everyone who train with me I warm up every session. I'm looking forward when my pec has recovered to the point where I can start rolling the rope again. I warm up for every single session that I do with the rope, and I actually started taking it to tournaments to warm up before tournaments as well.
Nice.
But I warm up for every session with the rope, and whenever people come and train with me, I teach them the rope and saying that what I do with Indian clubs, but more the rope. I feel like it's a bit more accessible.
Yeah.
And some people pick it up fast, and some people struggle. And one of my friends, she's really strong. She was Britain's strongest woman at one point, and she loves her barbells, and she comes around and just takes the piss out of me because I'm never doing normal stuff. It's always weird sandbags or other shit. And trying to teach her to do the rope was one of the funniest things I've ever seen, because she was really struggling to get it, and she just refused to see. It was like, but why? What's the point? What's the point? I'm like, but I can't explain to you what the point is. You've got to feel it for yourself. And that's the thing. And it takes a while. It's not instant. You may get the, you may get the double down, roll in.
The overhand, underhand.
Yeah, overhand, and, maybe the sneak and the dragon roll, the basic ones that I do and that I teach people. But it's not once you get fluid with them, and that can take, for some people, weeks of practicing. But once you get fluid, it's a beautiful space to be in.
It really is. Yeah.
It is. It is, because your body, you do feel like your whole body. I think in modern society and all of the issues that humans have biomechanically, so rarely are we in unison with our entire body. Exactly. And you'll have it for like a moment if you're lucky, and that will feel awesome. And I remember when I was a kid, I used to play golf, and I was not very good. But every once in a while on the driving range, you get a good shot. And it's still to this day what I use to describe that feeling when every point of your body just feels like it's done something perfectly, and there's this reverberation where you hit this ball and it flies into the distance, and you don't even need to see where the ball goes because it doesn't matter. It's not about where it goes.
Yeah.
And I think that
sweet spot.
I think that's it. And what actually happens is irrelevant. I think it's the same with the rope. What actually happens is irrelevant. It's how it feels, where everything feels like it's all worked perfectly together and it's nailed it. And with the rope, you can feel like that for prolonged periods of time. And with practice, you can feel like that for as long as you want, because you can continue to hit these movements.
Because you're on the same path. You can't not. If you're not on the path, the rope's going to hit you.
Yeah.
It puts you on the path of biomechanical efficiency. So it greases the groove. That's so nice.
Absolutely. And so that's been my experience with it. And I certainly don't do it to the level that you do. Whereas that you're experimenting with lots of cool new techniques and stuff. But I have been playing. Before I got injured, I was playing around more, both with the club and the rope.
It's good for one-handed roll, and that's what
one-handed stuff, two-handed stuff, switching over, and it allows you to get. I remember trying to learn the underhand
sneak,
the behind the back one, and I was trying to. I saw someone
do
it.
A bit of mobility for that one, don't you? Like that back shoulder.
Yeah, a little bit, but not too much. And I think I might have seen you do it or David do it or something. But I saw it, and it's one of those where you're like, how the hell, like. I don't understand how you've got the rope from one position to another position. And I remember going in to my home gym, into the garage one evening, just going, this is what I'm doing tonight.
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep on fucking this up until I get it right.
Wicked.
And it was like, wrong. Don't understand. Watch the video for reference. Wrong. And then you hit it once. And you're like, okay. And you hit it again. And you do it a few times so it's locked in. And within a couple of days later, you can just do this with your eyes closed without having to think about it, and it just all feels perfect. And you can just start if you could feel neurons being strengthened in your brain, then that is as close to what I think that's ever going to feel like.
Yeah, that's the magic. There's so much. The thing is, I don't like the rope because there are people that start developing all different patterns and tricks and all sorts. And for me, it's not about any tricks. It's literally about how can I train to be more functional and efficient, and how can I use this tool. So when I teach it, I've got courses online and coaches courses and stuff. It's all about using it for practical purposes. It's not about flashy tricks or anything like that. Like sometimes when I'm rolling and I put up a video, I might be like expressive with it, but for the most part, it's like it's a tool to make me a better athlete, and that's all I want to use it for, and that's all I try and coach it for. But it at its core, when you're swinging it, just to go back to it, there's a figure of eight path, isn't there, that you find of movement. That's when I say figure of eight, I mean infinity, which is the horizontal kind of figure of eight, where when you're moving on that path, there's no end, because the way when we think of sprinting or moving, like you swing your arm, you stop swinging it, and then you swing it back, and then you stop swinging it and swing it forward. Now there you're having to use effort to stop the swing and then change direction. Whereas when you're on the infinity symbol path of movement with all your joints, which when you roll rope and you really tune into, you can close your eyes and tune into each body part. Every joint is doing your wrist, your elbow, your shoulder, your spine, especially your ribs, even down to your ankle. If you go onto one leg, you close your eyes and you roll the rope in the underhand motion, which is where you essentially just swing it from side to side in the underhand roll. Every joint does a figure of eight. It puts a figure eight through that every joint, and that's how the body is designed to move. We're not meant to be robots. We've not got hinges. We've not got like hinge elbow. Well, their elbow's a bit of a hinge, I guess, but generally we're made to function with rotation. It drives everything. Rotation kind of drives every movement, and the more you get into biomechanical stuff and kettlebells, when you're pulling it, like if you add rotation, it's the catalyst for movement for every direction. And that's why he calls it RMT, rotational movement training. So it puts this figure eight path, and then there's also spirals coming after that. So when you start to sneak, what the sneak is the spine's doing a figure of eight, and if you drag and roll, you're doing this open and close, aren't you? Open the chest, close the chest, which is cool for what it is, and the spine's doing the figure of eight. But when you add the sneak in, the energy, there's a figure of eight going off from your ribs. The energy shooting down the arm. Now, if you just do drag and roll, you're stopping and starting. Whereas the sneak allows the spiral to happen, and it becomes a whip then. And the whip goes out down the hand, and then you can come in the other hand, and that's when we do tandem sneak, which is where you're doing underhand sneak on one arm and overhand sneak on the other, because it's just the figure of eight path is creating energy and sending it out through your limbs, and then it goes out down the rope. But you can, because of the ropes there, it's highlighting where the energy is going, and you can feel the whip into it. So it's just, I think it's really untapped and hard to express.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping I'm doing some job of expressing what it does, and it just tunes us into that natural path of movement that's there for us to tune into. And when you, and like you said, when you experience it, you're like, man, there's something profound to it.
Well, as you're explaining this, I'm thinking, one, this is a fantastic explanation, and two, you don't need it to be explained. You know, it's nice to explain it. You know, but I mean, like, I didn't know anything. I didn't understand. Like, that's the first I'm hearing, because of course your way of the rope logo or symbol is that infinity symbol, and I've seen you talk about it, seen Weck talk about it, but I didn't understand what it meant. So I've been training with the rope for years, getting benefit from it, but I've never heard. Yeah, you know, so the beauty of the rope, because a lot of people may listen to that and go, damn, you know, the all of these crazy names and techniques, and like, I've got to have spiral in my shoulder and my knees and my ankles, and go, but you don't need to worry about any of that, because by doing it, you will be going through all of that without having to consciously focus on it. And that's what it does, is it simplifies. You know, imagine trying to get that rotation in every single one of your joints at the same time without a rope. You know, it would be almost impossible to do.
You can't time the left and right hand to do the same thing at the same time, but the rope gives you that feedback. It's like the cup and a string, like talking to each other, the left and right side.
So, like, I thought that was a fantastic, like, the perfect explanation.
And I think that's so many people, like, they've played with the rope and they feel something, but you have to commit to trying to understand it. It doesn't matter if you don't, but like, you're forced to sit here and listen to me talk about it, and you're like, damn, I do get what you're talking about now. And when you do in the club, that's shoulder spirals, you know, and then you're trying to flow the momentum so that you're not just cutting yourself off. So,
you know, one of the things about the club, and since I've got the R&T club from Weck, I've been doing a lot more. And another thing that I'm really pissed off about is that I can't do that with, you know, because of my shoulder injury. I'm really looking forward to get back into it, because I was starting to experiment and flow a lot more. You know, one thing, I don't know if you do much club stuff.
I haven't yet, no. I want the RMT clubs.
You'll love it. Yeah, definitely grab one. And but I used to do with the club, there's basic movement. So there's like an inside, you know, with the arm kind of going, you know, if you're looking from the perspective of the person doing it, it would be, you know, it would be turning in a clockwise direction if you're doing it with the right arm, and then you can do the exact opposite where it's turning in an anti-clockwise direction. And those are basically the only two movements. And because you're spinning in a one direction or the other direction,
that's the figure of eight one, though, right? It's like boom, boom,
yeah,
and then you reverse the figure of eight on the other way. Yeah.
So in order for you to reverse it, you would be doing this movement, and then you would stop the club. It would come to a dead stop, and then you would go in the opposite direction. So either, you know, if it's coming towards me, I would push it with my hand and kind of throw it back in the opposite direction. If it was going away from me, I would bring it sort of out to arm's length away from me, stop, and then let gravity bring it back down to restart it. And when I first grabbed the R&T club, I was playing around with it, and I was doing one of these movements, this throw-in movement. I really, really like it. I used to do a lot more of this outside movement, but the inside movement is like a throw. And I know that the way that our shoulder articulates, there's a lot of theories that would suggest that, well, you know, this theory that our ability to throw objects was what kind of gave us a huge evolutionary advantage back in the day. And because we could throw spears, we could throw rocks, we could hunt
stones and ropes.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, so this throwing motion, and I know Nordy does it as well. That throwing motion with the club. I do other stuff with it, but I love the throwing motion. And I realized that if I did the throwing motion, which is this anti-clockwise, if I'm using my right arm, and then I step and I do a 180-degree rotation in my body, I'd go straight from the throw to the other side. And I remember doing this, and I was like, wait a minute. I don't have to stop this club. I can just step and go to the opposite direction, and then step again and go back to the original direction. So I could go clockwise, anti-clockwise, clockwise, anti-clockwise with the same arm, and then you just release it to the other arm, and then you can do the same. So now I could flow continuously with the club, doing every single one of those four movements, anti-clockwise, clockwise, left, anti-clockwise, and clockwise on the right, without ever having to stop the club, and you always have that
takes
fluidity.
Effort and stops the flow.
And then the stuff that I was adding more is actually being able to change it without stepping, which is like the club comes out and it drops immediately back down. So you're redirecting the movement instead of having to stop the movement. And instantly you get this different feeling. So when you were talking about the beauty of the rope is that you don't have to stop at any point, it's a continually flowing movement. I'm thinking that's exactly what I'm doing now at the club, and the difference it makes where you're able to flow from spiral to spiral to different spiral without ever having to stop is just so much better.
Well, you relate that to the battlefield or with a sword.
Yeah.
If you're stopping, there's a moment, there's a pause, someone's going to stab you or whatever. Whereas if you can continually flow, you could battle, that's what makes the best swordsman. And that's what I think it comes from. It's like, that's why Weck, that's when you talk to Weck in person, he's so focused on survival being the reason for everything that he learns and why we can do what we can do. And it is literally like, and that's why when he runs and why it's head over foot and he's always in balance, how he can always stop on one leg. Because in a fight, if you're caught and your weight isn't, like a cat is always ready to go. If a cat's walking, it can stop at any moment and its tail is always like behind it ready. As humans, we don't move. We just kind of walk like robots and we swing, and then we're always like unbalanced, but we're just stable because we've got a leg either side of us. Whereas his head over foot, he's balanced on that leg. And from there, you can choose whether you want to go forwards or backwards or whatever. And it's this mindset of looking at the body from positions of balance, which is really hard to even explain. But once you start to tune into it and you start to recognize it in nature and the way everything moves with the spiral pattern, and you look at someone like Usain Bolt and his running technique, and there's literally commentary of Michael Johnson saying Bolt would probably be faster if he ran straight like the Americans. And yet maybe it's the exact reason that he is the fastest is because he runs with more of a spiral in action in his run, in this figure of 8, and his head goes over his foot and his head comes back and his arms are pumping. And so it's exactly that. It's tuning into that pattern of movement that's in martial arts, that's in sword fighting, that's also in running, and it's just a beautiful discovery for humanity, for those that are on the biomechanical journey, I think.
Yeah, and you mention it there. One thing that's always fascinated me about David, and I think maybe one of the reasons why, one of the reasons why I was interested in, or another reason why I was interested into it, and a reason why I think more martial artists should be, and they're getting there. We see Lovato. I know Lovato's in San Diego,
exactly.
So he did landmine stuff and he rolls the rope. Cyril Garnet, is it Gain or Garnet? Yeah? Garnet is, who very, very, very good chance he might be heavyweight champion of the world very soon in the UFC. Rolling the rope out in France, which is really cool to see. But
that was really cool to see. Yeah, shout out his PT Ryan Gillet. Dominic Cruz, I've seen.
Does Weck stuff,
and he was originally
with the propulsors.
With propulsors and. There's a few boxes and stuff like that.
And so one thing that always stood out to me with David is he's always relating it back to fighting. It's always he calls it it's martial movement. He says, I know that he uses the word martial a lot, even though he, from what I'm aware of, he doesn't come from any, he
doesn't have a background.
He doesn't have a background in martial arts. And I found it just so fascinating that he would relate it back to that. But it makes sense to me because at the end of the day, for me anyway, with a huge bias towards it, fighting is the most important form of movement. Even though you've convinced me today that the other side, which is flight and rock climbing and running, and I've instantly got a new respect for all of those forms collectively together as the opposite side of the coin from fighting. Because that's it, fight and flight goes back before we were human, goes back millions of years. Fight or flight, or more specifically fight, flight or freeze, but freeze is not a particularly useful one. The two useful ones are fight or flight. Freeze is maybe the most common one, but the least useful of all of them.
That's that's what's happening right now, I think, because it's the battle right now is less physical with everything that's kicking off around the world. It's a much more psychological, and it's a much more, we're all more frozen, almost to the out of choice of, lockdowns and all that stuff. It's like, we can't fight or flight. Like.
Yeah. Nowhere to run, no one to fight.
Yeah.
But, fight and flight, these are beyond what makes us human, but purely what makes us alive are the most fundamental actions that we do with our body. Right?
Yeah. And truthful.
Yeah.
Like that, your friend who didn't like the rope, well, it's probably because it told her some truth she didn't want to hear. Yeah. She probably wasn't very efficient with her movement.
100%. And there's almost zero chance of her listening to this, so I can slag her off as much as I want. But I won't, because I told this to her face. You know, she's closed-minded. She's closed-minded, and actually when
there's a lack of humility, I think, to hear the truth, because the rope will highlight any inconsistencies in your movement, and you can either face that and improve it, or you can deny it and say, I won't roll rope because it makes me not feel good because I don't like.
Well, more importantly, no one will be good at it. Just like in martial arts, when you start jiu-jitsu, you will not be good. You cannot be good. You know, running's slightly different because it's such a innate thing.
I think the rope's more like, I think you can pick it like,
but maybe if we hadn't spent whatever life up to that point, you know, unconditioned ourselves to be able to move in that way.
Totally,
everyone that I've had do it, even though some have picked it up much faster, everyone started at nothing. Everyone struggled to begin with, and people, when they can't do stuff, get upset about that sometimes. And you know, in her case, she was like, "This is stupid. I don't see the benefit, and I can't do it."
She
therefore,
projected onto the tools useless.
100%. So if you listen to this, you know what to do.
But the thing is, when I picked it up and it was a 3-day course, and by the end of it I was much better than at the start, I was like this, because you don't need really, someone can teach you the beginning patterns, but you just then can go away for a few weeks and you'll be better. And you'll be better. You don't need to understand any of this stuff for it to improve the way you move. And that's right now. I'm about to launch. I've turned it, because at the moment when I sell the ropes, you get a foundations course with it, and you can buy the intermediate guide online. But I've turned it into an 8-week course, because I think because for me, I don't want none of this subscription model, like stay rolling rope for 3 years, sign up to my course, sign up month. Like, I did it loads for like a year, and I fucking loved it. Now I roll like, you know, twice a month or something.
Really?
Because
you've got that.
I've downloaded the software.
Really?
Like, once you got the message, hang up the phone. Like, I don't get as much benefit from it now.
Do you not feel a physical benefit to it? Because I feel like, even though I've got it down, I feel like I've downloaded the movement patterns.
I guess there's two folds to it. Yeah,
I love the physicality. I love it. I feel like it warms up my spine. I feel like it warms up my body.
I use it as a warm, like Ninja Warrior competition the other day. I was there between rounds. I use it as a warm-up for I'm going to go. It's such a good warm-up. So I do use it in those instances. It depends where my training's at, I guess. But in terms of like learning what I need to learn, that's why I turned it into an 8-week course. Because I think you can do 8 weeks of like 4 or 5 days a week, half an hour a day, right? In the morning, get up early, roll rope, 30 minutes, practice, be prepared to like face, you know, that frustration or whatever. But after those 8 weeks, then it's yours to be a tool. Then it's like you say, you can use it as and when you want for a warm up or for whatever purposes. But the bulk of the learning, like you said, you took yourself into your garage and you said, I'm gonna stay here until I learn this move. And that's what I've kind of done with the courses. Every week is different from the last week, but it's 8 weeks, and that's you get the underhand sneak. The crux, the final week, the two movements for me, I called fight and flight. It was the underhand sneak, which is that one, which I call sprinter's sneak or whatever, because it's trained to sprint. And then it was sneak matrix, and sneak matrix is what I think is like the epitome of sword fighting in the rope. So it's the sword fighting with the rope, and then the sprinting in the rope, and that's what I try and build you towards that. And then everything else, all the simpler stuff, and then is there yours forever as well, because it's like, you know, you one arm roll, you want the shoulder. It's all, you know, you can play with it, but it is that. It's like you put in the initial work in the beginning to get the rope, and then beyond that, you know when to use it yourself. Like, you use it for a warm up, but you're not there practicing new techniques because you don't need anything new out of it.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to create that. So it's like, here, download your software and then be on your way, you know?
Nice. Yeah, you know, I think it's something that we're already seeing more people do, you know, compared to when I started rolling the rope you know, back in 2017 or 18 or whenever it was, you know, seeing these high level guys do it, and I think we're only going to see more, you know. I knew something was happening when I started getting targeted ads for ropes on Facebook. I'm like, wow, there are companies advertising on Facebook. Great.
Yeah.
You know, one of the more recent things, maybe the most recent thing from Weck that I just wanted to talk about, because we spoke about it briefly after I was injured, and you mentioned it. You know, you talk about the feet, the hands. I've been doing the feet is such an interesting thing. I've always, you know, how I got the Raspberry Ape name is I was called like a monkey boy at school, because I'd use my feet. And at home, when I was a kid, I'd use my feet and I'd pick stuff up off the floor with my feet all the time.
Cool.
And then when I injured my back, when I was in my early 20s, when I was 21, I injured my back really badly and I couldn't bend down. So then I was like, okay, even better. I was picking even more stuff off because I dropped something, I just pick everything up with my feet.
Yeah.
And like people, I hate wearing shoes. I'm sure you're the same. I wear just, I've been wearing Vivos for years now, back when they were really affordable. And, you know, I have you seen the Skinners?
Yeah, I've got Skinners.
They're really cool. But
I just don't like the material that they're made.
I find that they, I've had 3 pairs now.
You?
The first one wore out in like 2 weeks. They sent me a new one. It wore out in like a month of barely using it. So now I have them and I barely wear
They're
it.
supposed to be like indestructible.
Yeah, they just... I think,
Zero's the best shoe. I don't know if you tried them yet.
so I have a Zero, the flip-flop.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, which I'm still kind of getting used to. The sort of the tribe running style.
Hirachi or whatever.
Yeah, Hirachi.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't...
Tarahumara.
Yeah, I've never liked wearing shoes, and I just feel like... Imagine if we walked around with boxing gloves on our hand all day.
Yeah.
Could you imagine that?
Yeah.
Like, and not a little bit, not for an hour a day. Imagine if you wore boxing gloves from a child onwards. You wore boxing gloves for what, 12 hours a day? You see some people wearing shoes in their house.
Yeah.
You know? Imagine if you did that. Imagine how undexterous, how weak, how unsensitive your hands would be.
Yeah.
But we do that thing for our feet, and just because our society and our world is built around the dexterity we have with our hands, for whatever reason we just go, okay, well feet can just get stuffed. And you know, so that's something I've always been aware of. And I've at one point I remember when I was at uni when I was doing this, so I had to be 19 or 20. I like gave myself a goal of Operation Monkey Feet, where I was going to try and get more dexterity, and I'd practice stuff, picking stuff up and moving stuff. And so like I haven't practiced it in a little while, but I could tie a jiu-jitsu belt on someone else with just my feet.
Amazing. Wow.
Which is a really, if you've got a belt here, maybe I'll try, we'll have a play with it later, see if I can still do it. And maybe I'd love to see you give it a go as well.
I wouldn't be close.
Probably because you just don't know how to tie a belt, but you'd probably be right with it. Yeah. But it's like, you know, it's a really interesting exercise. Okay, I'm completely off topic here. But it's a really interesting exercise in connecting your entire body. Because when you tie a belt with your feet, one, you have that left-right coordination, but you have to move your hip, because now you have to reach your foot underneath, and then you have to pull up, and then you have to bring your knee on the inside. So it's like a really nice drill for just building, because jiu-jitsu, for me especially, it's all about hip dexterity and mobility with the legs. So my hamstring mobility is awful, but my hip mobility is good. and jiu-jitsu is all about the hips, and you have to be dexterous, because when you're fighting, to be in a strong position, your arms are only there to help your legs when you're on your back. If you're attacking, you're doing a lot more stuff with the arms. But when you're playing guard positions, which is the quintessential base of jiu-jitsu, is fighting off of your back, using your legs to attack and defend and transition, your arms are only assisting your legs, because they are pale in comparison to the strength that you can generate. So being dexterous with your legs is so important, and that starts at the toes. Like you were saying with the telomeres on our DNA, or the end of a shoelace or the end of a drawstring. You know, the feet and the toes and the fingers are the ends of those caps.
On a belt, don't they sew the tip over?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And you know, we all know what happens when that metal or plastic end of a lace comes off. It frays and it goes to shit, and you've got a real problem. You've got to cut it off, or try and, it all falls apart. You know, so not looking at toes right now, because we spoke about that, but looking at hands. One of the things that Dave has been doing, I know that you've been practicing as well, is all of these hand positions, which is something that I saw and really interested me, because obviously I'm so into grip training, and it just relates much more to me than some of the other stuff. You know, I haven't done a huge amount. You know, first when he started talking about core fists and stuff like that, I would practice it, but it's hard to know because I haven't actually done it. I don't know whether I'm doing it right.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, you try and get the middle finger into the palm of that finger,
because you're pushing the middle finger in, right?
That's pushing in, and then you're kind of supporting it, and then it basically you put the middle finger into the middle of the palm. Yeah. For everyone listening, and then you wrap all the other fingers around it to support it in that position. And then you can punch your fist with that. It makes the wrist really strong then, like hard to bend. Whereas if you have a normal fist that wrist is so weak.
And that's all coming down to fascial alignment.
So that's skeletal. There's core fist and core fast, and the core fist is essentially what he's saying is a fist that we should use to punch, because it's much more stable than this, like, it's a spiral of the fingers going in itself to support, and it completes. It's kind of like the bones go out down there, around, and then back in on itself. So he's on about like electrical currents and all sorts that he's in. Who knows? But there's that, and then there's his core fist program, which is like. That's the C fist with straight fingers. D fist is that one, which is like you do that, but then you do that. You got C fist, the B fist, I think. Basically, he's come up with 8 different positions. Yeah, boom, and you kind of like tense everything. You just like that moment of tension, let it go, tension, let it go, tension, let it go, and it's like, and you can feel your whole body. And I was even the other day, I was doing like pretend pull-ups. I was setting the core fist, and I was tensing. Imagine I'm pulling up, and I can feel my whole like lats getting involved in it. Whereas if I just did that, it's like that. But when you actually get that, so basically, he's created these positions with the fingers, because he's saying that's what separates us from monkeys. Is monkeys? They have dumb hands. Like monkeys are like, they can move great, but what do they do with their hands? It's just like, they can pick a few bits up, but whereas we can be really precise and we can make art and play pianos and all this stuff. So there's so much scope for what differentiates us. And so he's tuning into, well, if there's nothing in a hand, what these kind of like mudras in yoga have come up with mudras, but he's on a different plane with it. And that essentially, I don't know whether it's the nerves or whatever it is, holding that position and tensing seems to create this. It pulls the whole. It takes all the slack out of the arm, and that's what, when you grip. What do you call that grip compared to that grip?
Yeah, like a vertical grip.
Vertical grip compared to horizontal. You can feel how much more. Yeah. It calls on the whole system when you do a vertical grip, whereas a horizontal grip is kind of like, it's kind of this empty side to your body. There's like ergonomic pull up. You can see lat pull downs. There's that mag.
Yes.
That stuff's great because it's designed to function to maximize like the muscle or whatever it is. So Weck's kind of tuned into these positions, and he talks about tensegrity, which is like, I don't know how, like the fascial tensegrity. It's kind of like tension with integrity, kind of like the whole thing's actively engaged, evenly spread, so there's no weight overly used in one area, something like that. So so he has a core fist course, and there's basically 8 positions, but I kind of shared with you the crux sort of is essentially hitting the 8 positions, 8 reps of each position, and it's like, it's really and I would do this, I was just doing it like 5 or 10 minutes a day for a few weeks, and I'd noticed like one day I did it and my pecs were really sore afterwards, and that's kind of why I shared it with you, because I was like, and that's the same that the Secrets of Athleticism, Chong, he talks about using the toes to connect the foot to glute connection. And for me, what Weck's doing is the hands to pec and the hands to lat kind of connection. And it's this really ringing of the fingers that calls the whole network and fascial system into play, that starts to build the Spider-Man suit. Now, that this is still early doors and it's still theoretical, although I think for me, Weck's proven it in himself, and I'm just like trying to catch up to him. But I think, actually what it's helped me loads with, I've been doing flowability as well, but I had like quite frustrating elbow tendonitis that was limiting, and I'm sure a lot of jiu-jitsu,
like insanely common,
and I could only climb once a week, and I'd be like a bit, when you finish a session, and I know everyone must be a sport for that as well, or a discipline for that. You've got niggles. You leave the session, you've got niggles, and it slows your progress, and it's like it hinders how much fun you have. Whereas now I've finished some climbing sessions, and I'm like a kid. Like I just feel like I've sweated my ass off, and my body, there's no bits of my body that's highlighted saying, "Oh, you need to watch out for me next time." And like 2 days later, I'm back training again and climbing, and it's like, for years I couldn't do that, and I can't identify precisely what it is, but I think there's something to the Weck fist stuff, because it's exactly what Chong's doing with the feet, just these nothing but your own fingers and your body and your intention, and it's just getting the reps in, and you can do it on a walk, boom, boom, B fist, C. I really like.
So when you get into position, you're tensing everything
down the network,
going towards the hand.
Yeah, you just tense like and you can just, and it just lights everything up to work as one system. Well, I mean, it's isolated in the arm region essentially, but it's not like it's not a tension like that. It's like an engagement. And it's really like healed my elbow and all this sort of stuff. And like I say, I'm able to train, and it's just been fascinating that as in how simple it is, and yet no one's doing it, and yet the profound experience that I've noticed with it.
How does David come up with this stuff? I hope to sit down and podcast him with him one day and see what he says to that question. But how the hell does he? Because like the guy has come up with more crazy stuff, but like people try it and they're like, this is legit every single time, and then he'll already be on to the next one. It's like, this is also legit.
He's physically sensing stuff at a level that we aren't capable of sensing until you put enough reps in, and then you go, I know what he was on about now. And that's those aha moments that I had with the rope and other things. And it's like, so I'm at a point now where I just trust what he says and I practice it. And I can shoot some stuff I take more than others, but I never forget anything that he's sharing because I know I need to revisit it. All the pro pulls, like I say, I'm still working through some ankle stuff, which I feel like I've made the most progress I've ever made lately with Chong stuff. But because there's missing links between what he's teaching and what people's bodies are capable of, I'm trying to bridge that gap to help share that with people, because it looks a lot of fun on the side where he's at.
Yeah,
it looks like he has a lot of fun, and I've done stuff like the arm stuff where in the beginning you don't really know what you're doing, and then eventually you can feel the whole network lighting up. And I think he's, because of maybe the weed, because anyone that's done that, I've done that for periods when I've done that and gone to the gym for like years, and I'm like, and done yoga classes, after eating weed and stuff, and you're like, I'm so tuned into my body right now. I can sense everywhere it needs love, where it needs to stretch, where it needs a myofascial release, whatever it needs, I can give it. But the only thing is that I never made long-term progress with the weed. Now, because I've stopped all that stuff and I've not done it for a few years now, or at least a good year, I'm slowly becoming more sensitive without that stuff, because you can use that stuff to get to. And the thing is, obviously, it's not just the weed that he's been able to do it, because a lot of people smoke and they've not coming up with the stuff he's coming up with. But he rollerbladed for 7 years in New York, and he got into the rope and the Bosu ball, and there's just a path. I would love for him to map out everything he's come up with, because there's stuff that's probably lost like in the ether right now, because he's moved on to the next one and it's gone. But essentially, between the rope and the pulsers and his coiling core, which is using your lower lats on each side, he's onto something. And I think whatever sticks in 5 or 10 years is going to be groundbreaking, and that's why me and you are both like front row seats, just like popcorn, just like
absolutely, man. So moving on for the wet stuff, because you've mentioned it a few times, this flowability. Just last thing we'll talk about, what is that? Because I asked you before the podcast, just chatting on what you're doing these days, and if you're doing something, it must be interesting at the very least.
So essentially the guy came up with it. He combined flexibility and mobility, which it is what it is. But most of us, when we move, and this is generalizing, but we use our lower back to do more movement than we should use it for. And often when people do like core, like sit-ups or something like that, they push the lower back into the floor and they do crunches. And that really is good for getting your six-pack or your rectus abdominis, the front abs. But the layer behind the rectus abdominis is the transverse abdominis, which is the core. You said you lifted the sandbag without the belt. Because I think sandbag training and strongman training strengthens the real root core stuff. And so they call it spine conscious training. It's a lot of breath work. It's a lot of strong exhales, because when we exhale, like forcibly blow out, all of our intercostals come into play. And if you never do strong exhales, you're not really strengthening all the muscles that support your ribs.
Well, you can feel it even if you just breathe out. Now you can feel if you're pushing from your abdominals like you should be.
So it's training us to breathe with the rib cage into the upper back. A lot of us flare our ribs. That's a big problem I had, was rib flare, especially from the handstands I said when I was younger. And I often felt like my upper body and lower body weren't connected. Like there was just a weird intuitive feeling like they weren't truly connected. And I think that was because I rib flare. Now through their practice, it's training me to tuck my ribs, but that's to not squash your lower back, because often if you say tuck your ribs, it's going to make us round our lower back. Now, if you keep your butt out and tuck your ribs, there's a battle that goes on in your spine. And when you find this position, if you look at any like top sprinters, especially the females, I saw in Elaine Thompson, the 100-meter female champion, after she won the gold, she lay on the floor. Her butt went from a butt, and there's a big curve in her back to her ribs. She couldn't squash her lower back flat if she tried. Her core is so supportive around her waist as a functional, strong, powerful athlete that's connected. Her whole body is one system. Because there's so many things that people can chase mobility and flexibility, but it can hinder your athleticism depending on what your goals are. And that it's such a big discussion, because you've got knees over toes guys saying one thing, and I agree with what he's saying, but then I see these guys that are like sprinters. You try and get a sprinter to do a resting Asian squat.
Yeah.
They can't do it. Their heels are going to come up because their body they're a finely tuned athlete. Their fascial network is tuned to a tension that if they were able to squat, they wouldn't have the tension to sprint like they do. So there's this debate of like, what do you actually want in your body? So flowability essentially is, with that in mind, a training system where the core's always engaged properly, because it's like the discussion about what the core is. The ribs are tucked so that they show a lot of pictures of like Muhammad Ali, where the front of his hips to his ribs was always a perfect line. And then what we should be doing is breathing into our upper back. And this is during activity, because we talk about diaphragmatic breathing when we're relaxing rather than our chest breathing. But during activity, if you breathe into your belly during physical activity, especially when you need the whole body like running, you cut off the TVA. The transverse abdominis has to let go. So there's no tension in the core anymore. If you can keep the core engaged, and this isn't about tensing, that you don't consciously tense it. We train it in training, and then the residual carryover when we're running is just there naturally, organically. It's not like because Weck says don't tense your core. You're not tensing it, but it's just the muscles there develop. And so you're running, and you can keep your stomach's flat, and you're breathing into your upper back, and that way your whole body's connected, your upper and lower body connected. And I've only done it for 2 or 3 months, and it's been so profound in, like, I say the Weck stuff as well, but in just getting rid of little niggles and injuries. And it's also a lot about, which crosses over with some of the functional pattern stuff. The shoulders are up and forward, and this, when we have the shoulder blades, the shoulders pointed forwards, it allows the neck to extend properly. Whereas if the shoulders are back, it limits how far we can extend. So there's certain positional cues that they've identified with athletes, like a lot of the other practices, that they have a system for training into the human body. And I've tried a lot of different ones, and this is the most accessible and profound in terms of hardware programming. Like I say, this along with Secrets of Athleticism, and then Weck method for the software. I don't know if you have any questions on that, but it's essentially, it's like most of us move from our lower back when it should be our glutes or our hamstrings that work. And it's this like I say, if you picture like someone in a field, picking a field, and they put their weight into their glutes and their spine straight, rather than this, like most of us just kind of fold over at and cut off our stomach. Yeah.
No, just super interesting. It's not something that I've heard of much. I've seen you talk about some of the stuff that you just mentioned, like the deep flat-footed squat position versus. It was one of my favorite things during the Olympics was actually watching your continuous commentary over it.
Yeah.
And I thought it was awesome because, I didn't watch a huge amount of it, but just you with the eye for biomechanics that you have, dissecting. Most people watch a 100-meter race and they watch who's running faster, but you watch a 100-meter race and see how the person's walking to the starting line.
Exactly, bro. I love it. Yeah.
Or how the person's lying on the floor afterwards, or how they're squatting next. When they squat and take a picture next to the world record. And watching all of those sprinters sit in the heels up squat position and sort of that knees over toe position.
Yeah,
they're never sitting backwards, and it makes so much sense. You compare it to a weightlifter or a power lifter, where all of the weight is always backwards because you're never moving, compared to a sprinter where it's the opposite. They're never still.
Yeah.
They're always moving forward.
That's exactly what flowability talk about a lot, is this forward energy. And what happens is, if you lean forward on your toes, the weight lights up in the back chain, because that's kind of suspending you forwards. And I don't know if you've heard that expression, like the front is for show, The back is
That's
for go.
Yeah, 100%.
And so many of us are stuck in our front chain and in our front muscles because of all the weightlifting and strengthening that we're doing, and we've not got this back chain in like on this forward, and we want the energy moving forwards with the back chain driving it, and that's what we kind of lost with a lot of our compartmental training.
Yeah, no, I'll be sure to check that stuff out.
It looks really odd. It's a lot of sticking the ass out and sticking the ribs back.
Yeah.
But it's this exaggerated position because we're so far one way.
You have to overly correct.
We're overly correcting the opposite way to find that balanced middle ground. Yeah.
No, that's awesome, man. I feel like we could talk about various biomechanics and stuff all day. We'll
come back in a year or something.
100%, mate. Yeah, you'll be doing something else. That's 2.5 hours now.
I need to pee so bad.
You've done pretty well.
You got
man.
an iron bladder.
Yeah, I always say I've never ever peed during a podcast ever.
I didn't want to say anything, so I've stuck it with you.
I could have paused there any moment.
No.
Dude, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed that conversation. I knew it was going to be a fun one, and you know, I do think it's one of the cases with you where you have such an interesting eye and such an interesting perspective with all movement that we could just shoot the shit about it anytime.
I feel like I'm just getting started, and I feel like this last year has been monumental in like my discoveries. Like I'm actually on my right path, like, and so yeah, the future's exciting.
100% love to come back and you know, in a couple of years' time and just see what you've discovered between now and then.
Yeah, it'd be so cool. And I just remember, like, just to bring it right back, when I first heard of you, was my favorite MMA journalist. Although now Ariel Hawani's independent, I like him a lot again now. But Luke Thomas just mentioned the way you were grip training, and I really like listened to more Luke Thomas than anyone else probably in the last few years.
Oh, awesome!
And he just mentioned you and like lifting up anvils and all this stuff like that, and that was like years ago. And then a few years later, we got to meet through Josh and Ape Nutrition,
which was super cool when we got the train together.
Got to see the actual space that I saw in the video, and it was really cool to train. And now we're just kind of both doing it. But yeah, I'll definitely revisit you.
100%, mate. And I'm hoping in the next year to be able to expand it into a actual full gym and you know, take that stuff and, you know, plant it as a seed.
I'll
and
come
grow it
down
into
and
bigger.
I'll try and get you to put a few ninja obstacles because it's
100%, mate, 100%.
Yeah.
And I got to get you on the mat sometime.
Yeah,
that's one thing. Next time I come up here, or next time we catch up,
I'll be honoured, man. Yeah.
Have you ever done any rolling before?
I actually only rolled with Dan one time.
Dan Hardy,
yeah, and it was just all instinct. But it was just so fun because you trust him, and he's not really pushing it, but he's just allowing me to and it was just fun. Like,
I'll have to get you on the mat
survival.
sometime.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much.
Yes.
That is it. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you want to find out more, if you want to follow Tim, then he has a few different Instagram accounts that you can check out. His main one or biggest one is at Human Timothy. He has a more biomechanics and movement based one, which is at Tim Moves. And then he has his company that does all of the rope stuff that we were talking about, which is Way of the Rope. And the Instagram for that is at Way of the Rope. We also spoke a lot today about Mr. David Weck. So if you do want to find out more about him, if you're intrigued by the man himself, then his Instagram is at the David Weck. As always, if you want to follow me and you're not doing it already, how shameful, then my Instagram is at raspberry_ape. And you can also follow purely this podcast, which is at Raspberry Ape Podcast. You can also check out my website, which is raspberryape.com. My YouTube channel, if you're not already watching this, then you can watch all of these podcasts on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/raspberryape. And if you want to get in contact with me and you don't have any social media, and you just want to go by email, then it is podcast@raspberryape.com. And of course, you can listen to this, if you don't already know, on many platforms: Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, or you have that YouTube option to watch as well. And if you want to, and you really enjoyed this episode or this podcast in general, do feel free to go and leave a review on iTunes. If you can do that, it's meant to be really good. I'm not sure in what way it's really good, but that's what people say. So thank you very much for listening, and I will catch you next time. Take it easy.